You've been told that growth comes from doing more, achieving more, from seeking approval and striving to have everything figured out. But if that's true, why do so many people who seem to have it all still feel stuck? Why do you still feel restless, anxious, or trapped in a loop of overthinking, unable to truly grow or move forward? The truth is, the less you care, the more you grow. It's not about chasing results or clinging to expectations. It's about releasing attachment and letting go. Buddhism teaches us that true growth comes from within, through caring less about the things we think we need, and instead focusing on the freedom found in detachment. Tonight, as you listen to these lessons, you'll feel something change. Your mind will quiet. The weight of pressure will start to lift. You'll experience a sense of clarity, like the fog clearing after a storm. And when you wake up tomorrow, you'll see the world with new eyes, stronger, lighter, more at peace. This isn't just another lesson to listen to. This is a shift in how you live, how you grow, and how you let go. Are you ready? Let's begin. As you step into the journey of letting go, you might be surprised by how much freedom comes with caring less about what others think. You've spent years, maybe even decades, constantly evaluating your actions based on the approval of others, your family, your friends, society's expectations. But what if all of that was holding you back? What if releasing your attachment to others' perceptions could unlock a deeper, more authentic version of yourself? We live in a world that constantly pushes us to conform, to fit in, and to care about how we are perceived by others. It's everywhere: social media, advertisements, conversations with friends, even family gatherings. We're bombarded with messages telling us who we should be and what we should care about. But what if all of this attention to external validation is the very thing that prevents us from living authentically? What if, by simply letting go of these concerns, we could unlock true freedom and growth? When you stop caring so much about how others view you, something extraordinary happens. You start to make choices that reflect who you truly are, not who others expect you to be. Your actions become more genuine, your words more sincere, and your decisions less influenced by the weight of other people's judgments. This liberation doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you choose to no longer carry the burden of other people's opinions. It's a gradual process of shedding unnecessary weight, allowing you to move more freely and confidently through life. Buddhism teaches us that attachment to external validation is a form of suffering. When we seek approval from others, we're essentially giving them control over our happiness. We're allowing their opinions to shape our reality. But by releasing this attachment, we reclaim our power. We open ourselves to true personal growth, not bound by the fears and expectations of others, but guided by our own authentic path. This process of detachment doesn't mean that we become indifferent or closed off to others. Instead, it means we no longer allow their perceptions of us to determine our worth. You no longer need to constantly measure your self-worth by the applause or criticism of others. Your value comes from within, and when you understand this, you begin to live more freely, with greater confidence and inner peace. The weight of other people's expectations can be crushing. It can stifle your creativity, dampen your spirit, and leave you feeling lost in a world of shoulds and musts. It's as if you're always living in someone else's shadow, struggling to keep up with a version of yourself that isn't even yours. But once you release the need for approval, you begin to step into the light of your own truth. The energy you once spent on seeking validation is now free to fuel your personal growth. You start to make decisions based on what feels right for you, not what others expect from you. True freedom comes when you stop allowing external forces to dictate your actions. It's about trusting yourself enough to go against the grain, even when the world around you might not understand. It's about walking your own path, even when it feels uncertain or lonely at times. Because when you stop caring about how others perceive you, you begin to live with a deeper sense of purpose and clarity. You begin to experience life more fully, without the constant fear of judgment or failure. This shift doesn't mean that you stop caring about others or their well-being. Far from it. Compassion and kindness remain at the heart of authentic living, but it does mean that you no longer allow the opinions of others to overshadow your sense of self-worth. You stop seeking approval because you realize that your worth is not dependent on anyone else's perception of you. The journey toward this liberation is a gradual one. It takes practice and patience. It's about becoming aware of the moments when you're influenced by the opinions of others and consciously choosing to release that influence. It's about becoming aware of how often you let the fear of judgment hold you back from pursuing your true desires and dreams. And it's about taking small steps toward trusting yourself more, toward embracing the idea that you are enough, just as you are, without needing anyone else's permission. One of the most powerful things you can do on this journey is to reflect on the things that truly matter to you. What do you value? What are your passions? What makes you feel alive? These are the things that should guide your actions, not the external pressures that tell you how you should behave or what you should want. When you begin to prioritize your own values over the expectations of others, you start to build a life that is truly your own. In Buddhism, there's a concept known as right view, seeing things as they truly are, free from delusions and attachments. This right view is about recognizing that much of what we hold on to is not essential. The desire for approval, the need for validation, these are attachments that, when released, allow us to see ourselves clearly and act with greater freedom. The less you care about how others view you, the more you can see your own path with clarity. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter and focus your attention on what truly nourishes your soul. When you let go of caring about others' opinions, you begin to cultivate a deep sense of inner peace. There's a calmness that comes from knowing you are enough, just as you are. You begin to trust that your own judgments are valid, that your choices are yours to make, and that you have the power to shape your life without seeking constant approval. This is true freedom, the freedom to be yourself, without fear, without the weight of societal expectations, and without the constant pressure of meeting other people's standards. This freedom doesn't come without challenges. It takes courage to let go of the need for approval, especially when it feels like it's been ingrained in you for so long. It requires the strength to stand firm in your convictions, even when others around you may not understand. But the more you practice this liberation, the easier it becomes. You begin to embrace discomfort, knowing that on the other side of it lies the life you were always meant to live. You start to notice the subtle shifts in your life, the moments when you feel lighter, freer, and more aligned with your true self. You become more creative, more open, and more willing to take risks. You begin to see the world through a new lens, one that is less concerned with the approval of others and more focused on your own personal growth and happiness. You find that your relationships become deeper, more authentic, and less bound by the need for approval or validation. The less you care about the opinions of others, the more you become your true self. You begin to show up in the world as the person you were always meant to be, unapologetically, confidently, and with a sense of purpose that doesn't rely on anyone else's approval. You become a force of nature, a person who is driven not by the need for validation, but by the desire to live a life that is authentic and fulfilling. This liberation doesn't mean that you stop caring about others or their feelings. It simply means that you no longer let their perceptions of you define your worth or influence your actions. You let go of the need to please everyone and start living for yourself, which is ultimately the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and for those around you. True growth, then, is not about fitting into the molds that others create for you. It's about breaking free from those molds and embracing the unique, beautiful person that you already are. It's about caring less about the approval of others and caring more about the things that truly matter to you. It's about trusting yourself enough to let go of what doesn't serve you and creating a life that is entirely your own, a life of freedom, growth, and authenticity. And once you release this attachment to the opinions of others, you'll notice that your world opens up in ways you never expected. The weight that once held you back starts to disappear. The decisions you make feel more aligned with your true self. You stop second-guessing yourself and start living with confidence, knowing that your worth comes from within, not from the approval of others. So, as you continue on this path, remember this: the less you care about the opinions of others, the more you grow. It's in the letting go, in the detachment, in the release of fear and judgment, that you'll find the space to become who you truly are. And in that space, true freedom will blossom. As you release your attachment to the opinions of others, you may start to notice a subtle but powerful shift in the way you relate to time itself. No longer caught in the constant pursuit of validation, you begin to feel more present, more grounded, as though the weight of external expectations is lifting. But there's another layer to this journey that is just as liberating, and it has to do with the way we attach ourselves to the future. For so long, we've been taught to look ahead. We're told to plan for success, to imagine a perfect future, to hustle towards something that will finally make us feel fulfilled. But in this relentless pursuit of what's next, we often miss the beauty of what's happening right now. The truth is, the more we fixate on the future, the less we live in the present. The more we worry about what's coming, the more we rob ourselves of the peace that exists in the here and now. Buddhism teaches us to embrace the void, the space between where we are and where we think we should be. It's in this void, in this moment of uncertainty and openness, that true growth can occur. When we release our attachment to the future, we open ourselves to the present, where life is actually happening. The future is a concept, a distant horizon that we can never fully grasp, yet so many of us cling to it, trying to shape it, mold it, control it. In doing so, we create unnecessary anxiety, stress, and a sense of disconnection from the life unfolding right before us. Letting go of future anxieties doesn't mean we stop planning, nor does it mean we stop caring about what lies ahead. It simply means we stop living as though the future is the only thing that matters. When we free ourselves from this constant chase, we begin to experience the richness of the present moment. Life becomes less of a race and more of a journey that unfolds in its own time, without the need for control or force. When we attach ourselves to a specific future, we place immense pressure on ourselves to meet certain goals or expectations. This attachment often leads to a sense of inadequacy, as though we're never quite where we need to be. We're always striving, always reaching, but never fully arriving. It's a cycle that keeps us stuck, creating feelings of frustration and unfulfillment. However, when we let go of this attachment to the future, we create the space for growth to happen naturally. We stop measuring ourselves by what we think we should have accomplished and start appreciating the journey we're on right now. This process of detaching from the future doesn't mean we abandon our goals or ambitions. It means we approach them from a place of calm, without allowing them to define our sense of worth. The key is to find a balance between setting intentions and releasing the need for specific outcomes. By doing so, we allow ourselves to enjoy the process of growth rather than constantly waiting for the next milestone. Life becomes less about arriving at a destination and more about being fully immersed in the journey, trusting that the right things will unfold at the right time. When you stop living in constant anticipation of what's next, you begin to experience the world differently. The pressure that comes with worrying about the future fades, leaving room for clarity and presence. This shift doesn't just affect how you experience time, it also impacts your relationships, your creativity, and your ability to enjoy the simple moments that make life so precious. You stop rushing through your days, checking off tasks on a never-ending list, and start savoring the richness of each moment. You begin to see the beauty in the small things, like a quiet morning, a conversation with a friend, or the feeling of sunlight on your face. Releasing the grip on the future also frees us from the endless cycle of comparison. When we're constantly looking ahead, we can't help but measure our progress against others, feeling either ahead of the curve or like we're falling behind. But by embracing the void, the space of uncertainty between now and what's to come, we stop comparing ourselves to others and start focusing on our own growth. This detachment from the future allows us to celebrate where we are without worrying about where we should be. We stop defining ourselves by external markers of success and start appreciating the growth that's happening within us, regardless of what others are doing. Another important aspect of embracing the void is recognizing that not everything needs to be planned or controlled. Life has a natural flow, and when we let go of our attachment to a specific outcome, we open ourselves to the possibility of unexpected opportunities and experiences. Sometimes, the best moments in life come when we least expect them, when we let go of our rigid expectations and allow ourselves to be open to the unexpected. This sense of openness invites creativity and spontaneity, allowing us to experience life in a more fluid and dynamic way. Living without attachment to the future doesn't mean giving up on dreams or goals. It simply means living with the understanding that the path to those dreams may look different than we originally imagined. It's about being willing to adapt, to pivot, and to trust that life has its own rhythm. The more we release the need to control every aspect of our future, the more we create space for life to unfold in its own unique way. As we begin to embrace the void and detach from future anxieties, we also develop a deeper sense of trust in ourselves. We stop looking for external validation or reassurance and start trusting our own judgment. We trust that we are capable of handling whatever comes our way, even if we don't know exactly what the future holds. This trust in ourselves allows us to move through life with greater confidence and resilience, knowing that we have the strength to face whatever challenges may arise. The practice of living without attachment to the future is not about living in a state of complacency. It's about finding peace in the present moment while still remaining open to the future. It's about trusting that things will unfold as they are meant to, without forcing or controlling the outcome. This mindset allows us to take action from a place of peace, rather than from a place of anxiety or desperation. When we are no longer attached to specific outcomes, we are free to make choices that align with our true values and desires, without fear of failure or regret. Letting go of the future also frees us from the fear of what might go wrong. So often, we spend our time worrying about all the things that could happen. What if I don't succeed? What if I fail? What if I make the wrong decision? But when we release our attachment to specific outcomes, we also release the fear of failure. We start to see that mistakes are simply opportunities for growth, rather than signs of defeat. This shift in perspective allows us to take risks and step outside our comfort zones, knowing that whatever happens, we will learn and grow from the experience. This doesn't mean we should live recklessly or without consideration of the future. It means we should live with intention, while also being open to the flow of life. We make choices that align with our values and goals, but we do so without clinging to the idea that things must turn out a certain way. By letting go of this attachment, we free ourselves to experience life with greater depth and richness, without the constant worry about what the future may hold. As we continue on this journey of letting go, we start to notice how much lighter we feel. The constant weight of future anxieties begins to lift, and we start to see the world with a fresh perspective. Our relationships improve, our creativity flourishes, and our ability to enjoy the present moment deepens. We stop waiting for the future to bring us happiness and fulfillment, and instead, we begin to find joy in the simple act of living. In Buddhism, there is a concept known as mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in the moment, without attachment to the past or the future. When we embrace the void and let go of our attachment to the future, we begin to cultivate this mindfulness. We stop living in a state of anticipation and start living in a state of awareness. We become more attuned to the present moment, more connected to ourselves and the world around us. The more we practice detachment from the future, the more we unlock the potential for true growth. We stop measuring our success by external standards, and instead we measure it by our own sense of fulfillment and peace. We begin to live with greater authenticity, knowing that our worth is not determined by what we accomplish in the future, but by who we are in the present. So, as you continue this journey, remember that letting go of the future is not about abandoning your dreams or goals. It's about releasing the need for control and embracing the flow of life. It's about trusting that things will unfold in their own time, and that the present moment holds all the potential you need for growth and transformation. When you let go of the future, you make space for the richness of the now, and in that space, true freedom and growth are born. As you continue to release your attachment to the future, something deeper begins to unfold within you. You start to feel lighter, not only in mind but in spirit as well. It's as if the weight of unnecessary expectations and distractions is slowly lifting. This feeling is the first step toward understanding one of the most powerful aspects of personal growth, the wisdom of empty hands. The more you let go of the clutter, the more space you create for your true self to emerge. For much of our lives, we've been told that more is better, more things, more possessions, more success. We are conditioned to believe that accumulating things is a sign of progress, a marker of success, a reflection of our worth. But have you ever stopped to consider that this constant pursuit of more may actually be holding you back? The truth is, the more we accumulate, the more we weigh ourselves down, both physically and mentally. Buddhism teaches us a simple yet profound truth. Living with less leads to living with more. More peace, more clarity, and more space for spiritual growth. It's not about renouncing the world entirely, but about releasing our attachment to the things that distract us from what truly matters. When we let go of our physical and mental clutter, we create the space necessary for deeper understanding, for more authentic connections, and for a life of true purpose. Clutter, whether it's material possessions or the endless noise in our minds, acts as a barrier between us and our potential. It diverts our energy away from the present moment, pulling our attention in 1,000 directions. The constant influx of things, ideas, and worries can overwhelm us, leaving us feeling scattered and disconnected. When we free ourselves from this clutter, however, we open the door to spiritual expansion. We begin to see the world clearly, unburdened by distractions, and we become more attuned to the quiet wisdom that exists within us. It's easy to get caught in the belief that having more will make us happy. We seek comfort in our material possessions, in the achievements we accumulate, in the identities we create through the roles we play in life. But Buddhism encourages us to examine the truth of these attachments. When we become too attached to our possessions, to our accomplishments, or even to the idea of who we are, we start to lose sight of the simplicity and peace that exists beyond these things. The wisdom of empty hands asks us to pause and reflect. It invites us to step back from the chaos of modern life and consider what we truly need. What is it that we really want to hold on to? And more importantly, what is it that we can release in order to create space for a deeper, more meaningful existence? It's a challenge to let go, but the rewards are worth the effort. As we begin to declutter both our physical environment and our minds, we begin to experience a profound shift in how we engage with life. Letting go of material possessions is a powerful starting point. It's not about giving everything away or living in deprivation, but about intentionally choosing what to keep and what to release. Ask yourself, do these things bring you joy, or are they simply occupying space in your life? Often, we hold on to objects not because they add value to our lives, but because we feel a sense of security in their presence. We tie our identity to these things, believing that they define us. But when we begin to release them, we begin to redefine who we are, not based on what we own, but based on who we truly are at our core. This process of letting go goes beyond the material. Our mental clutter, our worries, anxieties, and endless thoughts also takes up precious space in our lives. How much of your energy is consumed by unnecessary thoughts? How often do you find yourself replaying the past or worrying about the future? Just as physical clutter prevents us from living fully in the present, mental clutter prevents us from experiencing the depth of our own being. It distracts us from the peace and clarity that lie within us. Buddhism teaches us the importance of mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in each moment. When we let go of the mental clutter, we become more mindful of our thoughts and emotions. We stop allowing our minds to be ruled by fear, anxiety, or judgment. Instead, we create space for stillness, for clarity, and for a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. This is where true growth happens, not in the noise, but in the silence. The more we simplify our lives, the more we create room for what truly matters. It's not about eliminating everything that brings us joy or that serves a purpose, but about releasing what no longer aligns with who we are or who we wish to become. It's about making space for the things that nourish our souls and contribute to our spiritual well-being. When we begin to live with less, we realize that we don't need as much as we think we do to feel complete. In fact, we often discover that the more we let go of, the more we feel fulfilled. This principle of living with less extends to our relationships too. How much mental energy do we spend on maintaining relationships that no longer serve us? How much time do we waste on trying to please others or live up to their expectations? The wisdom of empty hands asks us to let go of the need for approval, the need to be seen in a particular light, or the need to hold on to relationships that drain us. By simplifying our relationships and focusing on those that truly nurture us, we create space for deeper connections, for more meaningful conversations, and for a sense of belonging that doesn't come from external validation, but from authentic presence. Living with less doesn't mean living without. It means living with intention, with awareness, and with an openness to the present moment. It's about choosing what to hold on to and what to release, not based on fear or scarcity, but from a place of wisdom and clarity. When we make room in our lives, physically, mentally, and emotionally, for what truly matters, we invite spiritual growth to flourish. We stop chasing after things that ultimately don't bring lasting satisfaction, and we begin to focus on the things that nourish us deeply. The more we let go, the more we realize that the external world has very little power over our internal peace. The clutter in our lives, the material possessions, the worries, the attachments to outcomes, keeps us from recognizing the innate wisdom and tranquility within us. But as we simplify, we become more in tune with the present moment. We begin to experience life with a sense of ease, with less striving and more being. We stop trying to control everything and start allowing things to unfold as they are meant to. This process of simplification is a continuous journey. It's not about achieving a perfect state of minimalism, but about making conscious choices that align with your true values. It's about stripping away the excess and focusing on what brings you joy, peace, and fulfillment. When we live with less, we become more present, more connected, and more aware of the beauty that already exists in our lives. As you continue this journey of letting go of material possessions, of mental distractions, and of unnecessary attachments, you will notice a subtle shift within yourself. You will begin to feel lighter, freer, and more at peace. You will realize that true growth doesn't come from accumulating more, but from creating the space to simply be. And in that space, your spiritual expansion will begin as you cultivate a deeper connection with yourself and with the world around you. So, as you move forward on this path, ask yourself, what can you let go of today? What clutter, both physical and mental, can you release to make space for the deeper, more meaningful life you deserve? It's a lifelong practice, one that will continue to unfold as you grow. But the more you simplify, the more you will discover the richness that comes with living with less. And in that simplicity, you will find the wisdom of empty hands, a wisdom that leads to spiritual growth, peace, and true freedom. As you continue to shed the weight of material and mental clutter, a subtle yet profound shift begins to take place. With each thing you release, you start to experience more freedom, not just in your environment, but within your own mind and heart. The more you let go, the more you begin to understand that there is a deep, almost unspoken power in not being attached to the outcome of your efforts. This detachment, in many ways, holds the key to unlocking a level of creativity and insight that most people never fully tap into. It's in the act of releasing your attachment to results that you begin to open yourself up to something far greater, true creativity and spiritual insight. In the hustle of daily life, it's easy to become fixated on the outcome of our actions. We want success, recognition, validation. We measure everything by results, and that focus often limits us. When we attach ourselves too tightly to the outcome of our efforts, we risk stifling the very creativity we seek to express. The desire for success or fear of failure creates a mental block, and we start to operate from a place of fear and tension. But what if we stopped caring so much about the end result? What if we allowed ourselves to simply create, to simply act, without the pressure of needing things to turn out in a specific way? Buddhism offers profound wisdom on this. The idea of non-care, of not being attached to the results of our actions, is a central theme in many of its teachings. By releasing our attachment to the outcome, we free ourselves from the anxiety and stress that come with trying to control every situation. In doing so, we also open ourselves to a deeper, more authentic creative energy. We stop forcing things to happen and instead allow them to unfold naturally. This act of surrender is not about giving up, but about letting go of the need to control, and in this freedom, creativity can blossom. When you let go of the pressure to achieve a specific result, you free up your mind to explore, to experiment, to make mistakes. This openness to the process, without the constant worry about whether you will succeed or fail, creates an environment where true creativity can thrive. You begin to see solutions and ideas you might have missed if you were too focused on a particular outcome. The absence of pressure allows for a flow state where ideas come naturally and inspiration can strike at any moment. This is the heart of creativity, the ability to tap into an energy that isn't bound by expectations or limitations. This same principle applies to spiritual insight. When we stop clinging to the idea of enlightenment or spiritual achievement, we create space for deeper understanding to emerge naturally. The desire to get somewhere spiritually often leads to frustration and stagnation. We set goals, we measure progress, and in doing so, we create an artificial timeline for our growth. But spiritual insight doesn't work that way. It doesn't come from striving or forcing things to happen. It arises in the moments when we let go, when we allow ourselves to simply be and observe the unfolding of life. The power of non-care is not about being passive or disengaged. It's about releasing the mental and emotional weight that comes with attachment to results. It's about allowing yourself to engage fully in the process without worrying about where it will lead. This mindset shifts your relationship to life itself. When you stop obsessing over the future, the next step, or the outcome, you become more present in each moment. You engage with life not from a place of anxiety or expectation, but from a place of curiosity and openness. Creativity thrives in an environment where there is no judgment, no fear of failure, and no need for validation. When you release your attachment to the outcome, you open the door to exploration and innovation. This is where true artistic expression happens. Think of the great artists, writers, and innovators throughout history. They didn't create from a place of rigid expectations. They were driven by a sense of passion and curiosity, and they were willing to fail, to try again, and to explore without worrying about whether or not they would succeed. This freedom to explore without fear of the result is what allowed them to push boundaries and change the world. In your own life, whether you are an artist, a thinker, a creator, or simply someone trying to make decisions and navigate challenges, the principle of non-care can be transformative. The more you detach from the need for specific outcomes, the more you can trust in the process and the wisdom of your own experience. You stop waiting for permission or validation from the outside world. Instead, you trust in your own instincts and intuition. You begin to act with confidence, not because you're certain of the result, but because you know that the journey itself is valuable, regardless of where it leads. This shift in mindset also impacts the way you approach challenges. When you stop attaching yourself to a specific outcome, you begin to embrace uncertainty. Life becomes less about getting things right and more about the lessons you learn along the way. Challenges no longer feel like obstacles to avoid, but opportunities to grow. The absence of attachment to success or failure allows you to face adversity with equanimity, knowing that whatever happens is part of the process. There is a profound freedom in this mindset. It liberates you from the tyranny of should and must. You stop measuring your worth by the results you achieve, and you begin to find value in the process itself. This is a deeply spiritual shift, one that aligns you with the flow of life rather than the constraints of your own expectations. It opens you to the wisdom that exists in each moment, in each breath, and in each step along the way. This freedom also carries over into your relationships. When you stop caring about how others perceive you or about what they think of your actions, you become more authentic in your interactions. You stop playing roles and start engaging from a place of sincerity and openness. You no longer feel the need to impress or win approval. Instead, you can simply be yourself, and in doing so, you create deeper, more genuine connections with others. This authenticity is magnetic, as it invites others to show up as they are, free from judgment or pretense. Non-care also deepens your spiritual practice. Whether you are meditating, praying, or simply observing the world around you, releasing your attachment to results allows you to experience each moment more fully. You stop measuring your progress by how good your practice is or by how quickly you think you should be advancing. Instead, you experience your practice as a journey, a continuous unfolding that doesn't require you to achieve anything other than being present. The beauty of this approach is that it allows you to find peace and fulfillment right where you are. You no longer need to wait for a perfect outcome to feel satisfied. You stop searching for the next big thing, the next accomplishment, the next success. Instead, you learn to find joy in the process itself, in the act of creating, in the moments of insight, in the small victories along the way. This is where true growth happens, not in the pursuit of a distant goal, but in the experience of each step along the path. This practice of non-care does not mean that you stop caring about things that matter. It means you stop allowing those things to control your emotions and actions. You learn to engage with life with a sense of ease, knowing that the outcome is not the final measure of your worth. You can care deeply about your work, your relationships, and your personal growth, but you no longer allow the need for specific results to define you. Instead, you let go of the need to control, and in doing so, you open yourself to creativity, insight, and true fulfillment. So, as you continue to let go of your attachment to results, notice how much freer you feel. Notice how much more you're able to create, to explore, and to learn. Life becomes less about reaching a destination and more about enjoying the journey. The more you embrace non-care, the more your creativity will soar, and the more you will find yourself deeply aligned with the natural flow of life. It's in this freedom that true creativity, spiritual insight, and personal growth are born. As you begin to experience the freedom that comes with detaching from outcomes, a new perspective on life begins to form. You start to see that true peace and growth come not from controlling every aspect of your life, but from learning to navigate the inevitable chaos that life throws your way. This sense of calm isn't found by avoiding the storm, but by embracing it without attachment to how it unfolds. It's about learning to weather the chaos without losing your sense of peace. Life has a way of throwing challenges at us, unexpected twists, difficulties, and moments of uncertainty that can easily overwhelm us. Whether it's a sudden change in circumstances, an emotional upheaval, or a series of events that seem beyond our control, it's easy to feel swept away by the current. But what if the key to navigating life's chaos wasn't about trying to control it, but about learning to respond to it with a calm, steady mind? The principle of non-attachment plays a crucial role in this process. When we stop clinging to specific outcomes or expectations, we free ourselves from the emotional turbulence that comes with resistance. Instead of reacting with anxiety, fear, or frustration when things don't go as planned, we learn to accept what comes and deal with it from a place of inner peace. This doesn't mean that we become passive or indifferent to the challenges we face. It means that we stop allowing those challenges to control our emotional state. In Buddhism, the concept of non-attachment is not about detaching from life itself, but from the need to control how life unfolds. The more we cling to a particular outcome, the more we set ourselves up for disappointment when things don't go as expected. But when we release our attachment to the result, we create space for resilience. We no longer invest our peace in the outcome. Instead, we find peace in the process, in the ability to stay grounded even when the world around us is in turmoil. This shift in mindset is powerful. It allows us to approach the storms of life with a sense of calm, knowing that we have the ability to adapt, to respond, and to find peace no matter what comes our way. We stop reacting from a place of fear or anxiety, and instead, we respond from a place of trust and understanding. Life will always have its challenges. What we can control, however, is how we react to those challenges. Non-attachment doesn't mean that we don't care. On the contrary, it means that we care deeply, but without the need to control. We can care about the people in our lives, the goals we are working toward, and the world around us. But we no longer allow our emotional state to be dependent on the outcome. This shift is liberating. It gives us the freedom to experience life fully without the constant fear of what might go wrong. When we learn to embrace the chaos without attachment, we also open ourselves to growth. Every challenge, every unexpected turn becomes an opportunity for learning and self-discovery. The storms of life are not something to fear, but something to face with courage and grace. Each difficulty teaches us something valuable about ourselves, about our capacity for resilience, and about our ability to grow stronger through adversity. The practice of non-attachment also helps us maintain perspective during difficult times. When we are attached to a particular outcome, we become fixated on the idea of how things should be. But this fixation can lead to frustration and despair when things don't align with our expectations. However, when we detach from the need for specific outcomes, we are able to see things as they are, without judgment or resistance. We can accept the present moment, no matter how difficult, and move through it with a sense of calm. In times of crisis, it's easy to become overwhelmed by emotions. We may feel fear, anger, or sadness in response to the challenges we face. But when we practice non-attachment, we are able to experience these emotions without being consumed by them. Instead of allowing our emotions to dictate our actions, we observe them from a place of neutrality. We acknowledge the feelings that arise, but we don't let them control us. We understand that emotions are temporary and that we have the power to choose how we respond to them. This ability to maintain calm in the face of chaos is one of the most empowering aspects of non-attachment. When we stop allowing life's challenges to throw us off balance, we begin to experience a sense of inner strength and stability. We realize that we can handle whatever comes our way, no matter how difficult or uncertain. The storms of life may still come, but we are no longer at their mercy. We stand firm, anchored in our own peace. Another key aspect of non-attachment is the ability to release the need for control. So often, we try to control every aspect of our lives, our relationships, our work, our health, because we fear the uncertainty of life. But the more we try to control, the more we fight against the natural flow of things. Non-attachment teaches us to let go of this need for control and to trust that life will unfold as it's meant to. This trust doesn't mean that we stop taking action or making decisions, but that we accept that we cannot control everything. There will always be elements beyond our control, and the more we can accept this, the more peace we will experience. This doesn't mean that we become passive in life. On the contrary, we are encouraged to take action, to engage fully in the world, but with a sense of non-attachment to the results. When we act from a place of detachment, we are able to do so with clarity and focus, without the fear of failure or the pressure to achieve a specific outcome. This freedom allows us to be more creative, more open, and more adaptable. We stop trying to force things to happen, and instead, we allow them to unfold naturally. One of the most profound benefits of non-attachment in the face of life's chaos is the development of resilience. Life will always present challenges, both big and small. But when we cultivate the ability to detach from the outcome, we develop a deeper sense of inner strength. We realize that setbacks are not failures, but opportunities to learn and grow. Each challenge, each storm, becomes a stepping stone toward greater wisdom and understanding. As you continue on your journey, remember that non-attachment is not about avoiding life's difficulties, but about learning how to navigate them with grace and peace. Life's chaos is inevitable, but how you respond to it is entirely within your control. When you let go of the need to control the outcome, you allow yourself to experience life in its fullness. You free yourself from the anxiety and stress of trying to manage everything, and you find peace in the midst of the storm. The calm you seek doesn't come from avoiding life's challenges, but from embracing them without attachment. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you are capable of facing it with resilience, strength, and peace. And as you continue to practice this non-attachment, you will find that your capacity for growth expands in ways you never thought possible. Life's chaos becomes less of a burden and more of a catalyst for transformation. Through each storm, you grow stronger, wiser, and more at peace. As you begin to feel the peace that comes from navigating life's chaos with detachment, there's an even deeper layer of growth that can occur, one that comes not from striving, not from pushing harder or working endlessly toward some distant goal, but from letting go of the very notion of striving itself. It's a concept that may seem counterintuitive in a world that values effort, ambition, and constant achievement. Yet, the secret to personal growth doesn't lie in how hard you work toward something, but in how much you can allow growth to unfold naturally. This is the wisdom of non-striving. When we stop forcing things and simply allow them to grow, we uncover a path of effortless expansion. Buddhism teaches us that true growth doesn't come from exerting force or pushing against the current, but from aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life. We live in a world that constantly encourages us to hustle, to try harder, and to be more. We're told that success is only achieved through relentless effort, constant striving, and the pursuit of more. But when we approach life with this mindset, we often find ourselves exhausted, stressed, and disconnected from our true selves. The more we push, the more we create resistance, and the harder growth becomes. Non-striving, however, teaches us that growth occurs effortlessly when we align ourselves with the present moment, when we stop trying to force things into being. This doesn't mean we abandon our dreams, desires, or goals. Non-striving doesn't equate to passivity. Instead, it's about shifting our focus from the outcome to the process. It's about letting go of the urgency to achieve and allowing ourselves to simply be present with what is. Growth happens when we stop obsessing over what we're supposed to become and instead trust that by being true to ourselves, we'll naturally evolve into who we're meant to be. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a saying, "The flower does not pick and choose the bees that come to it. The flower simply blooms. It doesn't try to force the bees to arrive, nor does it concern itself with when or how they will come. It grows simply by being itself." In the same way, when we stop trying to control our growth, we allow ourselves to unfold in the most organic, natural way. Striving often comes from a place of fear or insecurity, fear that we aren't enough as we are, fear that we have to become something more in order to be worthy. But in releasing that fear and embracing non-striving, we can rest in the knowledge that our true selves are already here, waiting to be discovered. The path of non-striving is about surrendering the need to push for more, to chase after an idealized version of ourselves. It is about embracing the present moment fully, trusting that growth will come without forcing it. This shift in perspective can be incredibly freeing. It allows us to step off the treadmill of constant achievement and take a moment to simply breathe, to just be. When we stop striving for something outside ourselves, we allow ourselves to reconnect with who we are in this moment, and that connection is where true growth begins. This doesn't mean we give up on progress or stop seeking self-improvement. It means that we approach these desires with a sense of ease and trust. Instead of trying to force ourselves to change, we allow change to happen naturally. Growth becomes a process of unfolding rather than a constant race to the finish line. Just like a tree grows tall and strong without effort, we too can grow, but only when we stop pushing and allow ourselves to grow at our own pace. There's an immense power in this shift. When we release the pressure to strive, we remove the emotional weight that comes with chasing success. The anxiety that accompanies the desire to be better, to be more, begins to fade. In its place comes peace, clarity, and a deep sense of trust in the process of life. Non-striving teaches us that we don't need to constantly achieve in order to feel worthy. We already are. This realization is transformative. It allows us to step into the flow of life with grace, knowing that everything we need is already within us. There is no need to chase after it. All we need to do is open ourselves to it. This path is not always easy, as our culture is built on the notion of effort and achievement. It takes courage to step away from this mindset and embrace the idea that things will unfold in their own time. However, when we let go of the relentless pursuit of more, we make space for the things that truly matter to come to us. This could be peace, creativity, love, or insight, all of which flow freely when we stop grasping for them. The practice of non-striving also involves letting go of the idea that there's one right way to grow. So often, we compare ourselves to others and think that we must follow a specific path to be successful or fulfilled. But growth is deeply personal. It is unique to each individual, and it doesn't happen according to a set timetable or formula. Non-striving helps us release these comparisons and find our own rhythm, allowing us to embrace our own journey, however it unfolds. When we learn to stop forcing progress, we realize that we are already on the path of growth, whether we recognize it immediately or not. Every moment, every experience is an opportunity for us to expand, to learn, and to grow. Non-striving teaches us to embrace the full spectrum of life, the highs and the lows, the successes and the failures, without clinging to any one of them. Instead of pushing for a particular outcome, we learn to embrace whatever comes with open arms, trusting that each experience is a step forward on our path to personal growth. This approach doesn't mean that we avoid responsibility or that we no longer take action. Non-striving isn't about being passive or indifferent to our lives. It's about recognizing that the most powerful actions come from a place of ease and presence, not from a place of stress and pressure. When we stop forcing things, we open ourselves to opportunities that might have been missed in our previous rush to the finish line. We become more attuned to the present moment, more aware of the subtle cues life gives us, and more open to the unexpected paths that lead to growth. In this process of non-striving, we begin to shed the false belief that we are incomplete or unworthy as we are. We come to understand that we don't need to become something more in order to be whole. Our true selves are already present, waiting to be embraced. Non-striving allows us to connect to that deeper part of ourselves, the part that is whole and complete, and in doing so, we begin to experience true personal growth. This shift also has profound implications for our relationships with others. When we stop striving to be someone we are not, we become more authentic, more present in our interactions. We stop trying to impress, to fit into preconceived molds, and instead allow ourselves to show up as we are. This authenticity creates deeper, more meaningful connections. We no longer seek validation or approval because we are at peace with who we are, and in turn, this peace allows our relationships to flourish naturally without the strain of effort or expectation. As you walk this path of non-striving, you'll notice that your goals and desires will become more aligned with your true self. You'll be drawn to pursuits that reflect who you truly are, not what others expect you to be. The sense of ease that comes with non-striving doesn't diminish your ambition, it refines it. Instead of chasing external success or recognition, you begin to focus on what truly fulfills you, on what aligns with your deepest values. Your growth becomes about discovering and expressing your authentic self, not about meeting societal standards of success. True growth, then, comes not from forcing ourselves to become something we are not, but from allowing ourselves to unfold naturally into the person we already are. Non-striving teaches us to trust the process of life, to stop fighting against it, and to allow it to flow freely. When we stop pushing, we open the door to effortless growth, growth that happens not through stress or force, but through ease, trust, and alignment with our true selves. The more we let go of the need to strive, the more we find that we are growing exactly as we need to. And in that growth, we become the fullest expression of who we are meant to be. As you continue to experience the peace that comes with non-striving, you may notice something even more profound unfolding within you. With every step you take away from the constant push for more, a deep sense of self begins to emerge, free from the weight of external validation. This shift is not just about letting go of striving for success or recognition. It's about liberating yourself from the need to seek approval from others. True growth and self-acceptance come when we stop relying on the external world to define our worth. When we care less about what others think of us, we begin to unlock a deeper sense of who we are. For much of our lives, we've been conditioned to seek approval, to look for validation from family, friends, colleagues, and society at large. We believe that our worth is measured by how others see us, by how well we meet their expectations. But what if the true key to self-acceptance wasn't about meeting anyone else's standards? What if it was about learning to trust in our own value, independent of others' opinions? Buddhism teaches us that attachment to approval is one of the greatest sources of suffering. When we base our worth on what others think of us, we are constantly at the mercy of their judgments, expectations, and perceptions. This creates an endless cycle of trying to please others, trying to conform, and never truly feeling at peace with who we are. The more we depend on external validation, the more we distance ourselves from our true selves. We become trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, constantly questioning whether we are enough. But when we release our attachment to approval, we free ourselves from this cycle, and we start to build a foundation of self-worth that is solid, unshakable, and entirely our own. Detaching from the need for approval doesn't mean we stop caring about others or their opinions. It means that we stop letting their approval, or lack of it, dictate our sense of self. We begin to realize that our worth is not determined by how others see us, but by how we see ourselves. This realization is liberating. It allows us to act in accordance with our true values, not based on what we think others expect from us. We start to make choices that align with who we are, not who we think we should be to gain approval. When we stop seeking validation, we open the door to deeper self-acceptance. We no longer feel the need to prove ourselves or live up to external standards. Instead, we start to trust our own inner voice, to honor our own needs and desires, and to stand firm in our own sense of worth. This kind of self-acceptance is not contingent on external achievements, looks, or praise. It comes from within. It's the understanding that we are worthy simply because we exist, and that we don't need anyone else's permission to be ourselves. One of the most powerful aspects of detaching from approval is the freedom it brings. When we stop caring about what others think, we free ourselves from the constant anxiety of needing to be liked or accepted. We stop measuring our value based on how well we fit into societal molds, and instead we start embracing our uniqueness. This freedom doesn't mean we become selfish or indifferent to the needs of others. On the contrary, it allows us to engage with the world from a place of authenticity and compassion, rather than from a place of fear or insecurity. When we are no longer attached to others' approval, we are able to pursue our goals and passions with confidence. We are no longer held back by the fear of judgment or failure. We can take risks, try new things, and step into our fullest potential without the fear of what others will think. This sense of freedom allows us to truly grow, not in the way others want us to, but in the way that is true to who we are. We no longer feel the need to fit into someone else's box. Instead, we create our own path, one that is aligned with our values and aspirations. Self-worth, when not reliant on external approval, becomes a solid foundation that can weather any storm. When we care less about what others think, we stop allowing their opinions to dictate our emotional state. We learn to face criticism, rejection, or even indifference with grace, knowing that these things do not define our value. The more we practice detaching from approval, the more resilient we become in the face of life's challenges. We realize that our worth is not contingent on how others treat us or what they say about us, but on our own sense of self. This detachment from external approval also leads to a greater sense of inner peace. We stop comparing ourselves to others, measuring our worth against their achievements or their opinions. Instead, we begin to appreciate our own journey, recognizing that we are on our own path and that our value does not need to be validated by others. We begin to embrace ourselves as we are, with all our imperfections, knowing that we are enough. As we detach from the need for approval, we also begin to see others differently. No longer concerned with fitting into someone else's expectations, we start to appreciate the uniqueness of those around us. We stop judging others based on how well they meet societal standards, and instead, we start to see them for who they truly are. This shift allows for deeper, more authentic connections. We no longer seek approval from others, but we do seek to understand and accept them as they are. This acceptance creates the foundation for compassionate and meaningful relationships. Letting go of the need for external validation also opens the door to creativity and self-expression. When we are constantly seeking approval, we limit ourselves to what is deemed acceptable by others. We fear making mistakes, we fear standing out, and we fear being judged. But when we detach from the need for approval, we are free to express ourselves fully and authentically. We no longer censor our ideas, our thoughts, or our creative impulses. We allow ourselves to be who we are, without worrying about whether others will accept us. This freedom unleashes our creativity and allows us to fully explore our potential. One of the most transformative aspects of detaching from approval is the realization that self-worth is not something to be earned or achieved. It is inherent in who we are. For so long, we've been conditioned to believe that we have to prove ourselves to be worthy. We've been taught that our value comes from our achievements, our appearances, and our ability to please others. But true self-worth comes from within. It comes from recognizing that we are enough just as we are. We don't need to seek validation because we are already worthy of love, respect, and acceptance. This shift in perspective is not always easy. It takes time and practice to let go of the deep-seated belief that our value is determined by external factors. But the more we practice detaching from approval, the more we begin to realize that our worth is unshakable. It doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion of us. It is something that we can cultivate from within, by accepting ourselves fully without judgment or comparison. As you continue to release your attachment to approval, you will notice how much more at peace you feel with who you are. You will no longer be caught in the cycle of seeking validation from others. Instead, you will find the freedom to be yourself, to pursue your passions, and to live in alignment with your true values. In this space of self-acceptance, you will begin to unlock your full potential. You will grow, not because you are trying to prove yourself to anyone else, but because you are finally embracing who you truly are. When you stop seeking approval, you start living authentically. You begin to appreciate yourself for who you are, rather than for who others think you should be. This authenticity creates the foundation for lasting self-acceptance and allows you to move through life with confidence, knowing that you are enough, just as you are. As you continue to release the need for approval and deepen your sense of self-worth, another layer of freedom becomes available to you, one that comes from letting go of the relentless pursuit of ambition. In a world that constantly measures success through achievement and progress, it can be difficult to consider that true freedom and growth may lie in releasing the very thing that has driven us for so long, ambition itself. We often equate success with achieving more, accumulating more, and being more. But what if the key to living authentically and experiencing true personal growth wasn't about doing more, but about allowing ourselves to simply be? This shift doesn't mean abandoning all aspirations or desires. It doesn't mean that you no longer seek improvement or personal development. What it does mean, however, is releasing the attachment to ambition, the desire to constantly prove ourselves through external accomplishments, and the belief that our worth is tied to what we achieve. By letting go of the need to measure our lives through the lens of ambition, we create the space to live with a sense of ease and contentment, rooted in the present moment rather than constantly chasing a distant goal. The Buddhist perspective on ambition is one of release and surrender. It encourages us to recognize that while striving for something can be a powerful force, it can also lead to suffering when we become attached to the outcome. When our happiness, our sense of purpose, and our sense of self become entangled in what we achieve, we open ourselves up to frustration, anxiety, and discontent. This constant striving creates a gap between who we are in the present moment and who we think we should be. It keeps us on a treadmill of always wanting more, with little time to pause and appreciate the journey itself. The problem with excessive ambition is that it often leads to a sense of emptiness. No matter how much we achieve, the feeling of never enough can still linger. We may reach one goal only to immediately set our sights on the next, constantly running after an ever-elusive sense of fulfillment. This cycle of striving can leave us disconnected from the present moment, unable to enjoy the fruits of our labor. It can even distort our understanding of success, turning it into something that is only validated by external markers, titles, wealth, recognition, while ignoring the deeper fulfillment that comes from living authentically. Buddhism teaches that attachment to ambition creates a form of suffering known as dukkha. This term refers not just to physical pain, but to the dissatisfaction that arises when we are attached to things that are fleeting or beyond our control. Ambition is often driven by an external focus, the desire to achieve a particular outcome, win approval, or be seen as successful by others. While these goals can certainly be motivating, when we attach our happiness to them, we set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment. The Buddhist path invites us to release that attachment, to recognize that our worth is not determined by what we accomplish, but by how we live and experience the present moment. By releasing excessive ambition, we create space for a deeper, more authentic form of growth. This growth is not based on comparison or external validation. It is rooted in who we are at our core, in our values, in our willingness to show up fully in each moment, without the pressure to constantly do more. True growth happens when we stop looking outside ourselves for confirmation and instead begin to listen to our inner voice, our true desires, and our purpose. The more we let go of ambition's grip, the more we are free to live authentically, in alignment with our own values, rather than the expectations placed upon us by the world. Letting go of excessive ambition doesn't mean we stop growing, learning, or improving. It means that we stop using these pursuits as a way to measure our worth. We begin to see that growth happens naturally when we create space for it, without forcing it. The most profound and lasting growth occurs when we let go of the pressure to achieve and instead focus on the present moment, on the process of being rather than the result of doing. In releasing attachment to ambition, we also free ourselves from the comparison trap. In today's world, we are constantly bombarded with images of others' success, whether it's through social media, the workplace, or personal relationships. We measure our lives against others, believing that we need to do more, be more, or have more to keep up. But when we let go of the need to compete or compare, we free ourselves from the constant pressure to outperform others. We can stop seeing life as a race and begin to see it as a journey, one that is unique to each individual. This shift towards releasing ambition allows us to redefine success in a more meaningful way. Success is no longer about what we accumulate or achieve, but about how fully we engage with the present moment. It is about finding fulfillment not in the end result, but in the journey itself, the process of living authentically, of cultivating relationships, and of finding peace within ourselves. When we stop chasing after external markers of success, we are free to pursue what truly brings us joy and fulfillment, regardless of how the world may measure it. This practice also encourages us to embrace the simplicity of life. We no longer need to fill our days with endless tasks, obligations, and achievements. Instead, we can learn to appreciate the beauty in the small things, the moments of stillness, the connections with others, the joy in simply being. The more we let go of the drive to accumulate and achieve, the more we are able to experience life fully and deeply. We begin to realize that true contentment comes from within, not from what we do or achieve. Letting go of excessive ambition also shifts our relationship to time. When we are caught up in the pursuit of success, we are often looking toward the future, measuring ourselves by what we will accomplish rather than what we are experiencing in the present. But by releasing this attachment, we stop living in anticipation of some future success and start to appreciate the time we have right now. This shift allows us to live more fully in the moment, without the constant pressure of what we should be doing next. This is where authentic growth happens, not in the future, not in the next goal, but in the present. When we stop striving for external validation, we begin to unlock our true potential, the one that is not limited by outside expectations or comparisons. Our growth becomes a natural extension of who we are, a reflection of our inner peace and contentment. We no longer need to prove ourselves because we already understand our inherent worth. This shift also enhances our ability to be compassionate, both with ourselves and others. When we release the constant need for success, we stop judging ourselves based on what we accomplish or how we compare to others. We stop seeing ourselves as failures or successes based on external measures. Instead, we embrace who we are right now, imperfections and all, and extend the same acceptance to others. We begin to appreciate the beauty of others' journeys without the need to compare or compete. This creates space for genuine connection, where people can show up as their true selves without the pressure to perform or impress. Ultimately, letting go of excessive ambition is a path toward freedom. Freedom from comparison, from external validation, from the endless pursuit of more. It allows us to reconnect with what truly matters, living authentically, being present, and experiencing each moment as it comes. This form of growth is not driven by force or striving, but by acceptance, trust, and ease. When we let go of ambition, we make room for true freedom and growth to unfold naturally. In this space, we become who we were always meant to be, not through striving or becoming, but through simply being. As you release the grip of excessive ambition and the need for validation, there's another powerful shift that begins to unfold: the letting go of a rigid sense of personal identity. The more we detach from our ambitions, the more space we create to explore the very essence of who we truly are. This journey of self-discovery requires us to let go of the labels, roles, and expectations that we've attached to ourselves over the years. These identities, shaped by the world and our experiences, often keep us trapped in a limited view of who we are. But when we begin to release these attachments, we open the door to a deeper, more authentic self, one that is not defined by external markers, but by the true, unchanging core of our being. For most of our lives, we've been taught to define ourselves by what we do, by how we are seen, and by what others expect from us. Whether it's the role we play in our family, the career we've chosen, or the image we project to the world, our sense of identity becomes tightly bound to these external factors. We begin to believe that we are the roles we play, the achievements we have, or the expectations we fulfill. But what happens when we let go of these identities? What remains when we release the need to define ourselves by what we do or how others see us? Buddhism teaches that attachment to personal identity is a major source of suffering. Our identity, when rigidly defined by external factors, becomes a cage that limits our potential. We become stuck in patterns of behavior that align with the image we've created of ourselves, rather than being open to the natural flow of who we are becoming. When we let go of these attachments, we create the space for deeper self-awareness, allowing us to connect with our true essence, not as a fixed, unchanging identity, but as a dynamic, ever-evolving being. This doesn't mean that we become lost or without direction. Instead, it means that we stop clinging to the notion that we are only one thing, or that we are confined by the labels others place upon us. The power of non-attachment to personal identity lies in the freedom it offers. When we are not attached to a specific version of ourselves, we are free to evolve, to change, and to grow in ways that we may not have thought possible. We no longer feel bound by the expectations of others or the stories we've told ourselves about who we are. The process of detaching from a rigid sense of identity allows us to experience the world with fresh eyes. We stop seeing ourselves through the narrow lens of past experiences, societal labels, or future expectations. Instead, we begin to see ourselves as we truly are, fluid, adaptable, and ever-changing. This shift opens us up to new possibilities and new ways of being. We begin to see that who we are is not fixed, but rather a continuous unfolding of potential, guided by our inner truth rather than external forces. This freedom is not only liberating on a personal level, but also enriches our relationships with others. When we let go of rigid identities, we stop projecting our expectations onto others and start seeing them as they truly are: free from the labels and roles we once imposed. This allows for deeper, more authentic connections, where we can relate to others not as versions of the roles they play, but as human beings in their full, unfiltered complexity. One of the most profound aspects of detaching from personal identity is the realization that our true self is not defined by any single aspect of our lives. We are not our job, our family role, our successes, or our failures. These are all aspects of who we are, but they do not define us. When we attach ourselves too firmly to these identities, we risk losing touch with the deeper, unchanging part of ourselves that exists beyond all of this. By releasing our attachment to these external identifiers, we connect with the part of ourselves that is always present, always whole, and always free. This process of non-attachment is not about rejecting who we are or trying to erase our past. It's about understanding that our identity is not a static label, but a living, breathing expression of who we are in this moment. The more we let go of our attachment to rigid identities, the more we are able to embrace the fullness of our being, free from the constraints of expectation or definition. In this space, we can explore new ways of expressing ourselves and discover deeper layers of who we truly are. Letting go of personal identity also creates room for a deeper sense of spiritual growth. When we stop identifying with a limited version of ourselves, we open up to the possibility of a more expansive, interconnected sense of being. We begin to see that our true nature is not separate from the world around us, but is intrinsically connected to everything. We are not just individuals, but part of a larger whole. This understanding fosters compassion as we begin to recognize the same essence in others. In Buddhist philosophy, there is a concept known as anatta, or the doctrine of no self. This teaching emphasizes the impermanent and fluid nature of our identity. It encourages us to let go of the belief that there is a permanent, unchanging self that we must cling to. Instead, we are encouraged to see ourselves as part of an ever-changing flow of life. By releasing our attachment to a fixed identity, we free ourselves from the limitations that come with trying to hold on to something that is always changing. This understanding of no self allows us to experience a deeper sense of peace, knowing that we are not confined by any single label, but are constantly evolving. The act of letting go of personal identity also allows us to step outside the constraints of comparison. So much of our sense of self-worth comes from measuring ourselves against others. We compare our achievements, our appearances, and our lives to those around us, often leading to feelings of inadequacy or competition. But when we detach from these external markers, we stop comparing ourselves to others. We begin to see that our worth is not determined by how we measure up to others, but by our unique expression of who we truly are. This release from comparison leads to greater peace and contentment, as we no longer feel the need to prove ourselves against anyone else. In relationships, this non-attachment to identity allows for deeper understanding and compassion. We no longer need to cling to the roles that we play, and we can engage with others in a way that is free from judgment or expectation. We stop seeing people through the lens of labels and identities and start seeing them as they truly are. This shift fosters empathy and connection as we recognize that, just like us, others are constantly evolving, shedding old identities and growing into new versions of themselves. Letting go of our attachment to personal identity doesn't mean that we abandon our sense of purpose or direction. It means that we stop relying on external labels to define who we are, and instead, we cultivate a deeper sense of inner knowing. We begin to act from a place of authenticity, guided by our true nature rather than by the roles we play or the labels we've adopted. This allows for more meaningful action, as we are no longer constrained by the need to meet others' expectations. We begin to live with greater freedom and clarity, guided by a sense of inner truth rather than by external pressures. This journey of detaching from personal identity is not an easy one. It requires courage, self-reflection, and a willingness to let go of the comfort of familiar roles and labels. But as we begin to release these attachments, we create the space for true self-discovery and spiritual growth. We come to understand that our true essence is not something we need to strive for, but something that is always present, waiting to be uncovered. By letting go of a rigid sense of self, we open ourselves to the fullness of life and to the deeper wisdom that resides within us. As you continue this journey of self-discovery, remember that the process of releasing attachment to identity is not about rejecting who you are, but about embracing the ever-evolving, fluid nature of your being. When you let go of rigid definitions and allow yourself to unfold naturally, you will discover a deeper connection to your true self, a self that is not defined by labels, roles, or external expectations, but by the limitless potential within you. As you continue to release attachment to rigid identities, you may begin to notice a surprising shift. The more you detach from the need to define yourself or hold on to specific roles, the deeper your capacity for genuine compassion becomes. The concept of detachment often evokes images of indifference or coldness, but in reality, it is through non-attachment that we can experience the fullest expression of love and care. True compassion doesn't arise from the need to possess or control. It flows naturally when we let go of expectations and allow others to be who they are. This paradox of loving without attachment is where the deepest, most meaningful connections are born. In a world where love is often tied to conditions and expectations, it may seem impossible to love without attachment. We are taught that love means holding on, that it requires a certain level of control, and that caring for others means wanting the best for them according to our own understanding. But attachment often distorts love. When we are attached to the outcomes of our relationships, whether in family, friendships, or romantic partnerships, we find ourselves weighed down by expectations, fear of loss, and a constant need to control. This is where true compassion is stifled, because love becomes entangled with desire and clinging rather than freedom and acceptance. The Buddhist view on compassion is not about possession or dependency. True compassion is the ability to care deeply for others without the need to control their lives or demand anything in return. It is the ability to hold space for someone else's suffering without letting that suffering define our relationship or our sense of self. This kind of love is not bound by expectation or condition. It doesn't require that the other person behave in a certain way or that they meet certain standards in order for us to care for them. True compassion arises when we let go of the need to manipulate or change others, simply accepting them as they are. In many relationships, we unconsciously tie our sense of self-worth and happiness to the actions, behaviors, or feelings of others. We attach ourselves to the idea of fixing someone or making them behave in a way that aligns with our expectations. This attachment to specific outcomes creates a subtle form of control, where we feel that the well-being of others is directly tied to our ability to make them happy or to shape their lives in a particular direction. But this is not true compassion. Genuine care and love do not come from the need to control or change the people we care about. In fact, true compassion thrives when we can let go of this attachment and allow others to walk their own path, even when it differs from our desires. When we practice loving without attachment, we become more present in our relationships. We stop focusing on how others should behave, and instead, we start to fully accept them as they are. This shift creates deeper, more authentic connections. When we remove the expectation that someone else has to meet our needs or desires, we allow them the space to be themselves without judgment or pressure. And in return, we begin to experience deeper intimacy and understanding because we are no longer clouded by our own expectations. The freedom to love without attachment means we can hold others in their fullest expression without trying to change them. And this freedom creates the deepest kind of connection. Non-attached love also allows us to hold space for the pain and suffering of others without becoming overwhelmed by it. In many relationships, when someone we care about is suffering, we feel the need to fix the situation. We might try to alleviate their pain by offering advice, changing the circumstances, or pushing them toward a solution. But this often comes from a place of attachment, an attachment to the idea that their pain is our responsibility to resolve. When we let go of the need to fix, we create room for compassion that is not rooted in a desire to control the outcome. We become present with their suffering without trying to change it, offering love and understanding without imposing our will. This is where true empathy arises, because we are not trying to change their experience, but simply being with them in it. This kind of care also frees us from the expectations that often taint our relationships. In many cases, love and kindness are given with the subconscious expectation of something in return, whether it's love, validation, or support. We may love others with the hope that they will respond in a certain way, or that they will love us back in the same measure. This creates a cycle of giving and receiving based on conditions. And while it may seem like love, it is, in fact, just another form of attachment. When we love without attachment, we give freely, without expectation, and in doing so, we experience the purest form of compassion. We are able to offer love because we choose to, not because we expect anything in return. This kind of love is unconditional and infinite, and it allows us to connect with others in ways that are free from the limitations of expectation. Moreover, letting go of attachment in our relationships also allows us to practice compassion toward ourselves. Often, we place the highest expectations on ourselves, believing that in order to be loved or accepted, we must meet certain standards. This self-judgment can create a barrier to self-compassion, preventing us from fully embracing our own flaws and imperfections. But when we release our attachment to the idea of being perfect, we open ourselves up to the possibility of accepting ourselves exactly as we are. True self-compassion arises when we let go of the belief that we need to earn our love or worth, and instead we simply allow ourselves to be human. This practice of non-attached love doesn't mean we stop caring deeply for others. Rather, it means that we stop clinging to the idea that we are responsible for their happiness or success. It means we release the need to control the outcome of our relationships, knowing that true love and compassion come from being fully present with others without expectation. We don't need to possess or control others in order to love them. Love can exist freely without the chains of attachment. It is a love that is offered from a place of deep acceptance and understanding, where we trust that those we care about are on their own journey, and that we can support them without needing to change them. When we stop loving out of attachment, we also stop allowing the fear of loss to dominate our relationships. Many of us cling to others because we fear that without them, we will be incomplete or unfulfilled. We hold on tightly to relationships, sometimes to the point of suffocation, because we are afraid of being alone or of losing the connection. But this fear of loss stems from attachment, and it prevents us from experiencing the full depth of love. When we release the fear of loss, we open ourselves up to experiencing love in a more liberated way, one that is not dependent on external circumstances, but on our ability to give and receive freely. In this space of non-attached love, we can be vulnerable without the fear of rejection or abandonment. We are free to express our care and affection without needing to control the response. We no longer tie our sense of worth to the reactions of others, and this creates a foundation of love that is strong yet flexible. It is love that doesn't demand or expect, but simply exists in its purest form, offering itself freely and without conditions. This approach to love and compassion creates the space for the deepest kind of growth, both for ourselves and for others. When we let go of the need to attach ourselves to specific outcomes in our relationships, we free ourselves from the constant pressure to perform or prove ourselves. We can love deeply and authentically without the weight of expectation, and in doing so, we allow others the freedom to love us in return without fear or obligation. This creates relationships that are grounded in acceptance and mutual respect, where both people are free to be themselves, knowing that love is not contingent on perfection or performance. The paradox of loving without attachment is that it leads to the most profound and lasting connections. It is through this freedom that we can love others fully without clinging, and it is through this love that we discover deeper connections to ourselves. Compassion, in its truest form, is not about what we can get from others, but about what we can give freely, without expectation and without attachment. And in this giving, we find the purest expression of love, one that transcends the limitations of attachment and opens us up to a more authentic, fulfilling way of relating to the world around us. As you start to experience the freedom that comes with loving without attachment, another liberating shift takes place, a shift that opens up the true potential for creativity and personal growth. This shift occurs when you begin to free yourself from the heavy burden of shoulds, the expectations that society, family, and even ourselves place on our lives. These shoulds often act as invisible chains that limit our potential, keeping us trapped in a cycle of trying to meet standards that aren't even our own. But when we let go of these self-imposed and societal expectations, we create the space for a life that is more authentic, expansive, and deeply fulfilling. We live in a world where expectations are everywhere. Society tells us what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, and how we are supposed to show up in our relationships and careers. We are conditioned to follow certain paths, to meet certain milestones, and to fit into prescribed molds. And while these structures can provide guidance, they can also suppress our individuality and creativity. When we are constantly trying to meet expectations, whether they come from others or from our own internal pressures, we can feel stuck, unable to explore what truly excites and inspires us. Buddhism offers a refreshing perspective on this. The path to true freedom lies in letting go of the expectations that bind us. The constant pressure to conform to external standards creates a constant sense of inadequacy. No matter how much we accomplish, we often feel like we are never enough because we are measuring ourselves against an ever-shifting set of standards. This cycle of striving for approval, validation, and success can drain our energy and limit our creativity. When we release these expectations, we free ourselves to discover what truly drives us, what feels authentic, and what resonates deeply with our own sense of purpose. The process of liberating ourselves from shoulds begins with questioning where these expectations come from. Often, we live our lives in accordance with rules we never consciously agreed to. We follow paths that others have set for us, whether they are the careers we think we should have, the way we think we should look, or the way we believe we should live. But in doing so, we suppress our own desires, our own creative impulses, and our true selves. The more we focus on what we should do, the less room there is for exploring what we want to do. When we let go of these societal constructs, we create the space to pursue what genuinely brings us joy and fulfillment. This release doesn't mean we become irresponsible or indifferent to the world around us. On the contrary, it means we choose to act from a place of authenticity rather than from a place of obligation. By letting go of the shoulds, we allow ourselves to make decisions based on our own values and desires rather than on the expectations of others. This shift opens up a world of possibilities where we can make choices that feel aligned with who we are and what we truly want, not what we think we should want based on external pressure. One of the most powerful effects of letting go of shoulds is the freedom to be creative. Creativity flourishes in an environment where there is no fear of judgment or failure. When we stop thinking about what others will think or how our work will be measured against society's standards, we open ourselves up to the full range of creative expression. We are free to experiment, to fail, to try again, and to create for the sake of creation, not for the sake of external approval. This freedom allows us to tap into new ideas and perspectives that we might have otherwise missed, had we been constrained by the pressure to meet certain expectations. When we let go of shoulds, we also give ourselves permission to be imperfect. Perfectionism often arises from a deep-seated belief that we must meet certain standards in order to be worthy of love, respect, or success. But when we release these standards, we begin to see that creativity and growth come from imperfection. We no longer need to present a flawless version of ourselves or our work. Instead, we embrace the process of growth, knowing that every misstep, every mistake, is simply a part of the journey towards something more authentic, and meaningful. This shift toward releasing societal and self-imposed expectations also creates a profound sense of inner peace. When we no longer feel the constant pressure to live up to external standards, we begin to experience life in a more relaxed and open way. We stop worrying about whether we are doing things the right way or measuring up to someone else's idea of success. This gives us the freedom to live on our own terms, to make mistakes, to learn, and to grow without the constant weight of judgment. We stop looking for external validation because we've learned to trust ourselves and our own unique path. As we embrace this freedom, we also create space for deeper self-acceptance. Letting go of shoulds allows us to stop comparing ourselves to others. We no longer measure our success by the achievements or possessions of those around us. Instead, we begin to define success in our own terms, success that aligns with our own values, desires, and passions. This creates a sense of fulfillment that is not dependent on the opinions of others or the standards set by society. We can live in a way that feels true to us, without the pressure of meeting someone else's idea of what our life should look like. This freedom also enhances our ability to connect with others. When we stop living by the shoulds, we become more authentic in our relationships. We no longer need to play a role or live up to expectations in order to be loved or accepted. Instead, we can show up as we truly are, flawed, imperfect, and fully human. This authenticity deepens our connections as we allow others to see us for who we really are. In turn, this allows us to appreciate others for their authentic selves without judgment or comparison. By letting go of the shoulds, we also tap into a greater sense of flow in our lives. We stop forcing things to happen, and instead, we allow life to unfold naturally. This doesn't mean that we stop taking action or working toward our goals, but it means that we let go of the need to control the outcome. We stop obsessing over what should happen and instead focus on the present moment, allowing ourselves to be guided by our intuition, passion, and curiosity. This approach leads to a life that feels more effortless, more in tune with the natural rhythms of the world around us. The power of letting go of shoulds is not just about finding freedom from external expectations. It's about finding freedom from the internal pressures that we impose on ourselves. Often, we create our own shoulds based on the ideals we've internalized over the years. We think we should be more successful, more accomplished, more perfect. But when we let go of these internal demands, we allow ourselves to embrace who we are right now. We stop chasing after an idealized version of ourselves and start embracing the version of ourselves that is already enough. This self-compassion creates the space for authentic growth, as we stop striving for an unattainable ideal and instead begin to grow from where we are. In letting go of the shoulds, we begin to create a life that is more authentic, more expansive, and more aligned with our true selves. This process is not about rejecting goals or aspirations, but about redefining what those goals mean. It's about choosing goals that are rooted in our own desires, not in the pressure to meet external standards. It's about living a life that feels true to us, not dictated by the expectations of others. The more we release the shoulds, the more we allow our creativity, our joy, and our authenticity to shine through. And in this space, we create the most meaningful, fulfilling life possible, a life that is defined by our own values, passions, and dreams. As you begin to shed the weight of shoulds and release the external expectations that have shaped your life, you start to experience a profound shift, one that goes beyond the pursuit of success or recognition. This shift, however, is not just about freeing yourself from social norms or societal approval. It also involves letting go of something that most people find difficult to release: the attachment to material wealth. The more we detach from materialism, the more we can cultivate a deeper sense of inner prosperity. It is not in the accumulation of things that we find lasting happiness or peace, but in the quiet realization that true wealth resides within. When we release our dependency on external possessions and wealth, we open the door to a kind of peace that cannot be bought. Material wealth has long been regarded as the key to happiness and success. Society often tells us that the more we acquire, the more secure and fulfilled we will become. We are conditioned to believe that our value is tied to what we own, to the cars we drive, the houses we live in, and the status symbols we display. But what happens when we stop chasing these external markers of success? What if the real treasure is not what we can possess, but the peace and contentment that comes from releasing our attachment to these very things? Buddhism teaches us that attachment to material wealth is a form of suffering. The constant desire for more, the belief that happiness lies just beyond the next purchase or achievement, keeps us in a perpetual state of yearning. We may reach one goal only to immediately set our sights on another, never truly satisfied with what we have. This endless pursuit creates a cycle of discontent as we attach our happiness to fleeting external circumstances. But when we let go of the need to possess and control material wealth, we free ourselves from this cycle. We realize that true prosperity is not about what we own, but about the peace and contentment we cultivate within ourselves. The more we let go of material attachments, the more we realize that what we truly need for happiness and fulfillment is already within us. Our sense of well-being does not come from the things we accumulate, but from our ability to find peace, joy, and meaning in the present moment. Material wealth, when pursued excessively, can distract us from what really matters: our inner peace, our relationships, and our connection to something greater than ourselves. By detaching from this pursuit, we open ourselves to a deeper sense of happiness that is not dependent on the ever-changing circumstances of the external world. This detachment from materialism does not mean that we abandon all possessions or reject the value of financial stability. It means that we release the attachment to material things as a source of validation or self-worth. When we stop measuring our success by the number of things we have, we begin to see the world with new eyes. We appreciate what we have without constantly craving more. We learn to find joy in the simplicity of life, in the moments of connection with others, and in the beauty of the present moment, rather than in the accumulation of possessions. The more we detach from material wealth, the more we begin to experience the true wealth that comes from inner peace. This wealth is not something that can be bought or sold. It is a state of being that arises from within. It is a sense of contentment, of feeling complete and at ease, regardless of the circumstances around us. When we stop seeking external validation through material success, we create space for inner growth. We begin to nurture the qualities that lead to lasting happiness: gratitude, mindfulness, compassion, and self-awareness. These qualities are the true wealth of life, and they are available to us at any time, regardless of what we own or what we have accomplished. In many ways, detaching from material wealth allows us to reconnect with our deeper values. We stop living to impress others or to meet society's standards, and instead, we focus on living in alignment with what is truly important to us. This shift frees us from the pressures and expectations that come with the pursuit of material success. We no longer feel the need to prove our worth through possessions or accomplishments. Instead, we begin to live a life that reflects our authentic self, one that is not dependent on what we have, but on who we are. The more we detach from materialism, the more we cultivate a sense of abundance in our lives. True abundance is not about the quantity of possessions, but the quality of our experiences. It is about appreciating the richness of our lives, the connections we share with others, and the inner peace we carry within us. When we stop chasing after external wealth, we realize that we are already abundant. The wealth we seek is not outside of us, it is within. And as we cultivate this inner prosperity, we begin to attract more of what truly nourishes us: meaningful relationships, fulfilling work, and a deep sense of satisfaction that is not dependent on what we own. This inner wealth also transforms the way we approach our relationships. When we are not attached to material wealth as a measure of success, we are free to connect with others on a deeper level. We no longer need to impress or compete. We can simply be ourselves, knowing that our value is not defined by what we have. This authenticity fosters genuine connections, where we are seen and appreciated for who we are, rather than for what we can offer in terms of material possessions or achievements. These deeper, more meaningful relationships become a source of true happiness and fulfillment. Moreover, letting go of attachment to material wealth allows us to focus more on the things that truly bring us joy. We stop filling our lives with distractions and possessions that don't add value, and instead, we make space for the things that nourish our soul: time with loved ones, engaging in creative pursuits, and nurturing our physical and mental well-being. By prioritizing these things over the constant pursuit of more, we create a life that is rich in experiences and relationships rather than in possessions. This journey of detaching from materialism is also a journey of personal transformation. It requires us to let go of deeply ingrained beliefs about success and worth, and to redefine what it means to live a fulfilling life. It challenges us to move beyond the external markers of achievement and to find contentment in the simple, everyday moments of life. The more we practice non-attachment to material wealth, the more we develop a deep sense of inner peace. We realize that our happiness is not tied to our possessions, but to our ability to live in alignment with our values and to appreciate the abundance that already exists in our lives. As we continue on this path of detachment, we begin to experience a profound shift in our perspective on life. We stop measuring success by the amount of wealth we accumulate or the status we achieve. Instead, we measure success by the peace, joy, and fulfillment we experience in the present moment. This shift brings with it a sense of freedom. We are no longer bound by the need to accumulate more. We are free to experience life as it is, without the constant pressure to chase after something else. This freedom creates space for true personal growth as we stop seeking external validation and start focusing on the richness of our inner world. The liberation from attachment to material wealth is not just about letting go of things, it is about letting go of the need to control our happiness through external means. It is about recognizing that true prosperity lies within us, in our ability to cultivate peace, gratitude, and connection. When we detach from the pursuit of material wealth, we unlock a deeper sense of fulfillment, one that is not dependent on external circumstances, but on the richness of our own hearts and minds. And in this space, we find the true wealth of life, inner peace, happiness, and the freedom to live authentically. As you release attachment to material wealth and cultivate a deeper sense of inner prosperity, you begin to realize that true freedom doesn't just come from what we acquire or achieve. It comes from our ability to respond to life's stimuli with calmness and clarity. The more we let go of our dependency on external sources of validation and satisfaction, the more we realize that true control comes from our ability to remain non-reactive in the face of life's constant changes. The world will always present challenges, surprises, and emotions that trigger us. But the real power lies in how we choose to respond to these moments. Non-reactivity isn't about suppressing our feelings, it's about creating space between stimulus and reaction, allowing us to respond from a place of balance rather than from a place of impulse or overwhelm. Non-reactivity is a profound practice that many spiritual traditions emphasize as key to personal growth and mastery. In the chaos of daily life, we are bombarded with stimuli, whether it's the stress of work, emotional triggers in relationships, or the constant flow of information and distractions around us. These stimuli often lead us to react impulsively, either out of fear, anger, frustration, or even excitement. However, when we are reactive, we lose our sense of control, letting our emotions dictate our actions rather than responding with thoughtfulness and awareness. The true practice of non-reactivity is not about being passive or detached. Rather, it is about gaining mastery over our emotional state so that we can respond with mindfulness and wisdom. In Buddhism, non-reactivity is often linked to the practice of mindfulness. By observing our thoughts, feelings, and reactions without immediately identifying with them or being swept away by them, we create space for a more deliberate response. This space allows us to choose how we engage with the world, rather than being controlled by it. When we stop reacting automatically, we free ourselves from the cycles of emotional turbulence that often dictate our lives. We begin to realize that we do not need to be ruled by our impulses or external circumstances. Instead, we can choose how we respond to life's challenges, cultivating a sense of calm and clarity even in the midst of chaos. One of the most powerful aspects of non-reactivity is its ability to help us detach from our emotional triggers. We all have certain things that set us off, whether it's a difficult conversation, an uncomfortable situation, or an unexpected change in our plans. When we react to these triggers, we often find ourselves caught in a loop of negative emotions. We may feel anger, frustration, or anxiety, and these feelings can quickly spiral out of control. But when we practice non-reactivity, we can begin to observe these emotions without immediately attaching to them. Instead of becoming consumed by our feelings, We can simply acknowledge them and let them pass, much like clouds drifting across the sky. This ability to detach from emotional reactions allows us to regain control over our emotional state, rather than allowing our emotions to control us. This practice of detachment doesn't mean we suppress or deny our emotions. It means we allow ourselves to feel them fully, but without letting them dictate our actions. Non-reactivity invites us to experience life as it is, without judgment or resistance. When we release our attachment to how things should be, we can respond to life's challenges with greater openness and acceptance. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent to life's difficulties. Rather, it means we approach them with a sense of equanimity, understanding that all things, both pleasant and unpleasant, are temporary. By letting go of the need to react immediately, we allow ourselves the space to choose how we wish to respond, which opens the door to personal growth and transformation. The ability to remain non-reactive also allows us to build resilience. Life will always present us with challenges, whether they are big or small. However, our ability to remain calm in the face of these challenges determines how well we can handle them. When we are reactive, we often feel overwhelmed and powerless. We become victims of our emotions and circumstances. But when we practice non-reactivity, we develop the strength to face adversity with clarity and confidence. We stop seeing challenges as threats to our well-being, and instead, we begin to see them as opportunities for growth and learning. With each challenge we face with a calm and steady mind, we become stronger and more resilient. Non-reactivity also plays a vital role in the quality of our relationships. In our interactions with others, we are often triggered by the words, actions, or behaviors of those around us. When we react impulsively to these triggers, we may say or do things that we later regret. However, when we practice non-reactivity, we create the space to respond with empathy, understanding, and compassion. Instead of reacting out of anger or frustration, we are able to listen deeply and respond thoughtfully. This shift in how we engage with others can transform our relationships, leading to greater harmony, trust, and mutual respect. As we detach from the need to react to external stimuli, we also cultivate a deeper sense of self-awareness. Non-reactivity invites us to reflect on our emotional triggers and patterns. We begin to notice the things that cause us to react, whether they are certain situations, people, or unresolved issues from the past. By recognizing these triggers, we gain valuable insights into our inner world. This self-awareness allows us to identify areas where we may need healing or growth, and it empowers us to make more conscious choices in how we respond to life. Instead of being driven by unconscious patterns, we begin to live with intention, aligning our actions with our deeper values and purpose. Another benefit of practicing non-reactivity is the sense of peace that it brings. The more we react to life's challenges, the more we create inner turmoil. We find ourselves constantly battling against our emotions and circumstances, and this internal conflict creates stress and anxiety. However, when we let go of the need to react immediately, we experience a sense of calm and stillness that allows us to approach life with clarity and perspective. This inner peace is not dependent on external circumstances, but on our ability to maintain a steady mind and an open heart, regardless of what is happening around us. Non-reactivity also enhances our creativity. When we stop reacting impulsively to life's stimuli, we create space for new ideas, solutions, and perspectives to emerge. Our minds become clearer, and we can think more deeply and creatively. We stop being bogged down by immediate reactions and judgments, which allows us to engage with life in a more open and expansive way. By practicing non-reactivity, we become more attuned to the flow of ideas and insights that arise from within, leading to greater creativity and problem-solving abilities. The practice of non-reactivity is a journey of self-mastery. It is about learning to respond to life's challenges with grace, mindfulness, and clarity, rather than being swept away by our emotions or impulses. When we cultivate non-reactivity, we gain control over our emotional state and develop the ability to navigate life's ups and downs with resilience and wisdom. This mastery over ourselves is not about suppressing or denying our emotions, but about creating the space to respond consciously with awareness and compassion. As you continue on this path of non-reactivity, you will begin to notice profound shifts in how you experience the world. You will feel less burdened by the chaos of life, more at peace with the unpredictability of existence, and more connected to your inner strength. The more you let go of the need to react impulsively, the more you will discover the depth of your own wisdom, creativity, and emotional resilience. With this newfound freedom, you will unlock greater personal growth and mastery, ultimately living a life that is more peaceful, fulfilling, and in tune with your true self. As you begin to embrace the power of non-reactivity and gain control over your emotional state, a subtle but powerful realization arises. The more we let go of excess, the more we open ourselves to true freedom. This freedom doesn't come from accumulating more things or experiences, but from stripping away the layers of clutter, both in our physical environment and in our minds. The more we simplify, the more we create space for what truly matters, allowing us to evolve spiritually and live with greater clarity, purpose, and peace. Life, in its most essential form, is not about complexity, but about the beauty found in simplicity. Simplification is a concept that has been revered in many spiritual traditions, and for good reason. The more we hold on to, the more we are weighed down, not only by our material possessions, but also by our thoughts, responsibilities, and attachments. When we simplify our lives, we create an environment in which we can focus on what truly matters. We begin to see that many of the things we accumulate, both physically and mentally, don't contribute to our happiness or growth. Instead, they keep us distracted, overwhelmed, and disconnected from our deeper selves. The first step in simplifying is recognizing that we don't need as much as we think we do. Society encourages us to accumulate, whether it's more things, more achievements, or more experiences, in the belief that these will bring us happiness or fulfillment. But in reality, the more we accumulate, the more we create noise in our lives, making it harder to hear the quiet voice within. This noise distracts us from our true desires and purpose. It feeds a cycle of constant wanting and striving, leaving us feeling empty, regardless of how much we possess. When we simplify, we start to cut through this noise. We realize that our true fulfillment doesn't come from what we own or the status we hold, but from the space we create for peace, reflection, and connection. By letting go of the unnecessary, we create a life that is more focused, more intentional, and more aligned with our core values. Simplifying doesn't mean sacrificing joy or pleasure, but rather removing the excess that drains our energy and attention so we can focus on what truly nourishes us. In terms of material possessions, simplification is not about living in deprivation, but about embracing intentionality. It's about making conscious decisions about what we keep and what we let go of. When we hold on to too many things, they not only take up physical space, but they also take up mental space. Each item we keep carries a memory, a thought, or an expectation. And while some of these items may serve us, many others are just remnants of past identities or symbols of things we feel we should have rather than things we truly need. When we begin to declutter, we begin to let go of these lingering attachments and free ourselves from the burden of shoulds. This release creates a sense of freedom, a freedom to live with less and appreciate more. The same principle applies to our mental clutter. We often hold on to unnecessary thoughts, worries, and past regrets, which prevent us from fully experiencing the present moment. These mental clutter patterns become ingrained in our psyche, shaping our decisions and emotions in ways that limit our growth. Simplifying the mind means learning to let go of the thoughts and stories that no longer serve us. It means clearing out the space for new, fresh perspectives and focusing our energy on the present moment. Simplicity also allows us to reconnect with our spiritual nature. When life is filled with excess, whether physical, emotional, or mental, it's easy to feel disconnected from ourselves and the world around us. The clutter of everyday life, both external and internal, drowns out the stillness required for spiritual insight and growth. But when we simplify, we create the space for deeper introspection and spiritual connection. In that space, we are able to listen to our inner voice, align with our true values, and deepen our understanding of the world and our place in it. This sense of freedom found in simplicity is also reflected in our relationships. When we are caught up in the pursuit of more possessions, more achievements, more validation, we often find ourselves disconnected from those around us. We become distracted not only by our material desires, but by the expectations and obligations we place on ourselves and others. Simplifying our relationships means letting go of these expectations and allowing others to show up as they are. It means freeing ourselves from the pressure to perform or to fit into predefined roles, and instead focusing on deepening authentic connections. In a simplified life, there is less room for the distractions of comparison and competition. When we remove the external markers of success and fulfillment, such as possessions, status, or achievements, we can begin to see others for who they truly are, not for how they measure up to our own standards. This shift brings with it a sense of peace and understanding, as we no longer feel the need to judge or compete. We can simply be present with others, appreciating their uniqueness and engaging in relationships that are grounded in mutual respect and compassion. The practice of simplifying our lives also has a profound impact on our mental and emotional well-being. When we are constantly surrounded by noise, whether it's the physical clutter of our homes or the emotional clutter of unprocessed feelings, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and disconnected. Simplification creates space for relaxation and rejuvenation. It allows us to step back from the constant demands of daily life and to focus on what really matters, our inner peace, our relationships, and our connection to the present moment. This creates a sense of calm and clarity that can have a transformative effect on our overall well-being. Moreover, when we simplify, we learn to be more intentional with our time and energy. Rather than spreading ourselves thin with countless activities or obligations, we focus on what brings us fulfillment and joy. This intentionality leads to more meaningful experiences as we are no longer distracted by the busyness of life. We can direct our attention to the things that truly nourish us, whether it's spending quality time with loved ones, pursuing our passions, or engaging in practices that promote our spiritual growth. This intentional focus also creates the space for us to rest and recharge, which is essential for personal growth. By letting go of excess, we also begin to align ourselves with a deeper sense of purpose. When we remove distractions and unnecessary baggage, we can more clearly see the path ahead of us. We are no longer bogged down by the weight of external expectations or the pressure to perform. Instead, we can move forward with clarity and confidence, guided by our inner wisdom and a sense of purpose that comes from within. This alignment with our deeper values leads to more authentic action and more fulfilling experiences, as we are no longer chasing after things that are disconnected from who we truly are. Simplicity also allows us to appreciate the beauty of life as it is, without needing to constantly strive for something more. In a world that is always pushing for more success, more things, more accomplishments, it's easy to lose sight of the simple joys that already surround us. But when we simplify our lives, we begin to appreciate the richness of the present moment. We learn to savor the small things, like a quiet walk in nature, a shared meal with loved ones, or a moment of stillness. These moments of appreciation bring us back to the essence of life, reminding us that the most important things cannot be bought, but must be experienced in the present moment. The more we simplify, the more we cultivate the freedom to truly live. We stop chasing after external markers of success and start living in alignment with our own values and desires. We let go of the need for approval, the pressure to perform, and the constant striving for more. In doing so, we create a life that is more peaceful, more authentic, and more connected to our true selves. This simplicity leads to spiritual evolution as we learn to embrace life as it is, without attachment to the outcomes, and with a deep appreciation for the beauty and richness of the present moment. In letting go of excess, we discover that true freedom comes not from accumulating more, but from creating space for what truly matters. The more we simplify, the more we make room for inner peace, growth, and connection. This freedom allows us to step into our most authentic selves, to live with intention, and to experience a life that is rich with meaning and purpose. As we begin to experience the freedom that comes from simplifying our lives and letting go of excess, another powerful realization emerges. The ability to truly heal often comes from stepping back rather than constantly trying to fix. In a world that constantly urges us to act, solve problems, and intervene, the deep silence of non-concern offers an entirely different approach. When we detach from the need to control or fix everything around us, we create the space for natural healing to occur, both for ourselves and for those we care about. This shift requires not only understanding the value of stillness, but also trusting in the process of life, knowing that peace and healing often emerge when we stop pushing and start allowing. For most of us, the impulse to fix is deeply ingrained. We want to make things better for others, solve the problems that arise in our lives, and often we feel an internal pressure to do something when faced with difficulty. Whether it's a loved one who is suffering, a challenge at work, or an emotional struggle, we feel the need to jump in and intervene. But what happens when we relinquish the need to fix and instead choose to simply be present without expectation? How does this shift in perspective create the conditions for true healing? Buddhism teaches that the root of much of our suffering comes from attachment, not just to people, objects, or outcomes, but to our constant need to intervene and control situations. This attachment to fixing stems from a fear that things are broken or wrong, and that we are the ones who must set them right. However, this approach often only exacerbates our stress and prevents true healing. The more we try to fix, the more we entrench ourselves in the problem, often overlooking the natural processes that lead to growth and resolution. The art of non-concern is about relinquishing control and trusting the natural course of things. It is a practice of observing without interference, offering support without feeling the need to take over. This doesn't mean we become passive or detached from the world around us. Rather, it means we learn to act with discernment and wisdom, knowing when to step in and when to step back. This detachment from the need to constantly fix allows us to create space for natural solutions to emerge, solutions that may be far more effective and profound than anything we could impose through intervention. When we stop trying to fix everything, we allow others to heal in their own time. Often, when we step in too quickly, we disrupt the natural process of healing. People, situations, and even our own emotions need time and space to settle, and when we constantly try to influence or control the outcome, we prevent this natural flow. Healing is not a linear process. It moves in its own rhythm, and sometimes the best thing we can do is offer our presence, compassion, and understanding without trying to change the course of things. This also applies to our own lives. We often become frustrated with ourselves when things don't go as planned or when we face challenges. The impulse to fix ourselves can be overwhelming, whether it's trying to overcome a flaw, change a habit, or heal from a wound. But what if, instead of forcing change, we allowed ourselves to be present with our struggles? What if we stepped back and allowed the process of healing to unfold naturally, trusting that the space we create for ourselves is enough for growth to take place? Non-attachment to the need to fix also involves trusting in the wisdom of life itself. When we detach from the idea that we must have all the answers, we open ourselves to the deeper wisdom that already exists within us and around us. This trust in the process allows us to surrender to the flow of life, knowing that everything will resolve in its own time. The more we practice stepping back, the more we realize that many of the answers we seek are already available to us, but we often cannot access them when we are caught up in the urgency of fixing. This detachment from intervention doesn't mean we stop caring. On the contrary, it means we care deeply enough to allow the other person or situation the space to evolve and heal. True compassion doesn't come from fixing, it comes from understanding and supporting. When we release the need to impose our solutions on others, we create the space for them to discover their own path to healing. This kind of support is far more meaningful and empowering because it honors the autonomy and capacity of others to navigate their own journey. The act of detaching from the need to fix also encourages a deeper sense of acceptance. We learn to accept things as they are, rather than trying to force them into a mold that fits our expectations. This acceptance is not passive resignation, but a recognition that life, in its imperfect state, is exactly as it needs to be. When we embrace this understanding, we find peace in the present moment, free from the constant urge to change or control what is happening around us. It's in this peace that true healing occurs, both for ourselves and for others. In relationships, this shift can be transformative. Often, when someone we care about is struggling, we want to fix their problems, ease their pain, or find a solution. However, this desire to fix can sometimes create tension and distance. The person in need of help may feel invalidated, as if their experience is not being fully heard or understood. But when we step back and allow them to express their feelings and find their own way forward, we create space for genuine connection. We honor their process, and in doing so, we deepen our relationship by showing that we respect their journey and trust their ability to heal. When we let go of the need to fix, we also free ourselves from the pressure to constantly have the right answer or solution. This pressure often creates unnecessary stress, as we feel that it is our responsibility to make everything right. But in releasing this attachment, we allow ourselves to be present without the weight of expectation. We can listen, empathize, and offer support without the burden of needing to solve the problem. This freedom creates a sense of ease and flow in our interactions with others, as we learn to embrace the natural rhythms of life. By detaching from the need to fix, we also stop defining our value by what we can do for others. Many of us tie our sense of worth to our ability to help or save others, believing that our role in relationships is to provide solutions. But when we release this attachment, we begin to see that our value doesn't come from our actions, but from our presence. We can offer love, compassion, and understanding without feeling the need to rescue or intervene. This shift allows us to experience more genuine, unconditional love and to engage in relationships without the hidden agenda of fixing. Another important aspect of this practice is that it allows for true personal growth. When we stop trying to fix every problem or solve every issue, we give ourselves permission to simply be. This space of non-interference creates room for introspection, self-awareness, and deep healing. We stop rushing toward a resolution and start accepting the lessons that come with each experience, no matter how challenging. This growth isn't always linear, but it is always transformative. The deep silence of non-concern doesn't mean we become passive or disengaged. It means that we become more conscious of when and how we intervene. It is about recognizing that not every problem needs to be fixed, that not every emotion needs to be corrected, and that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is simply be present, listen, and offer support without expectation. This practice creates space for natural healing to unfold, allowing peace and growth to arise in their own time. As we continue to practice non-reactivity and detachment from the need to fix, we begin to experience a profound shift in how we interact with the world. We feel more at ease, more connected, and more aligned with the natural flow of life. We realize that much of the suffering we experience comes from our attempts to control and fix things that are beyond our control. By letting go of this need, we create space for the peace, healing, and growth that life has to offer. As we continue to explore the liberating effects of stepping back from the need to fix and control, a profound realization begins to emerge. It's not just about letting go of external attachments or relinquishing the need to constantly react to life's stimuli. True freedom and growth also arise from a deeper shift, the ability to detach from self-interest. The more we shift our focus away from ourselves and our personal gain, the more we can tap into the power of selflessness, which holds the key to both personal and collective transformation. When we let go of the constant pursuit of self-centered desires, we open up the possibility for a greater, more expansive way of living that benefits not only us, but also the world around us. In a world that encourages us to prioritize ourselves, our success, our achievements, our needs, it can be difficult to imagine that true freedom comes from the opposite, focusing less on the self and more on others. But this is one of the core teachings of Buddhism, the idea that attachment to self-interest is a barrier to true happiness and spiritual evolution. The more we focus on our own desires, the more we become trapped in a cycle of wanting and never being truly satisfied. Our identity becomes defined by what we want, what we have, and what we believe we deserve, which keeps us locked in a limited perspective. However, when we begin to detach from this narrow view of ourselves, we create space for something much larger, the opportunity to experience connection, empathy, and collective growth. This detachment doesn't mean we neglect our own well-being or forget our needs. It simply means we stop making everything about me and begin to recognize the interconnectedness of all beings. When we let go of self-interest, we shift from a mindset of scarcity, where everything is a competition, to a mindset of abundance, where we recognize that the more we give, the more we receive. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, a concept that arises from our attachment to our individual desires and identity. The more we cling to this sense of self, the more we separate ourselves from others, from the world, and from the flow of life itself. Our desires and attachments create division, and this division fuels suffering. But when we begin to detach from self-interest, we begin to experience the unity that exists beyond individual egos. By putting less focus on the self, we align ourselves with the collective good. And this alignment not only nurtures personal growth, but also fosters a deeper sense of connection with others. The more we detach from self-interest, the more we begin to see that true fulfillment comes not from accumulating personal wealth or achieving personal goals, but from contributing to the well-being of others. This shift from selfishness to selflessness creates a deeper sense of satisfaction, because it is no longer about what we can get, but about what we can give. In giving, we experience a deep sense of joy and purpose that transcends material gain. This isn't to say that self-care or personal achievement is unimportant, but rather that our true happiness and growth lie in our ability to transcend the limitations of ego and connect with something greater than ourselves. This practice of detaching from self-interest also opens up the potential for greater collective growth. When we stop viewing the world through the lens of individual success or failure, we begin to recognize that our actions affect others. The more we detach from self-interest, the more we are able to act in ways that benefit not only ourselves, but also those around us. This is the foundation of collective evolution. When individuals begin to prioritize the well-being of others, the whole community or society begins to thrive. We stop seeing ourselves as isolated entities and begin to view ourselves as part of a larger, interconnected whole. In this space of selflessness, we also become more compassionate and understanding. The more we detach from our own desires and needs, the more we can see the struggles and joys of others without judgment or attachment. Compassion arises when we stop viewing others as means to fulfill our own needs and begin to see them as equals on this shared journey. This compassion is not based on pity or obligation, but on a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. It is the realization that when one person suffers, the collective suffers, and when one person heals, the collective heals. By focusing less on ourselves and more on others, we also begin to cultivate a sense of humility. We stop seeing ourselves as the center of the universe, and instead, we recognize that we are part of something much larger. Humility allows us to approach others with respect and empathy, acknowledging their unique experiences and perspectives. It also allows us to accept our own imperfections and limitations without judgment. The more we detach from self-interest, the more we are able to engage with the world with an open heart and mind, free from the constraints of ego. This process of detaching from self-interest is transformative because it allows us to break free from the cycles of desire, attachment, and dissatisfaction that keep us trapped in a narrow, self-centered view of life. The more we detach from the need to satisfy our personal wants and needs, the more we open ourselves up to the natural flow of life. We begin to experience life as a gift rather than something to be controlled or acquired. In this space of surrender, we create the conditions for true spiritual growth. Growth that is not based on external achievement, but on an internal shift in consciousness that aligns us with the greater whole. The practice of detaching from self-interest also leads to greater resilience. When we are no longer attached to the outcome of our actions or the success of our personal goals, we become less affected by setbacks or challenges. We stop defining ourselves by our successes or failures, and instead, we see them as opportunities for learning and growth. This resilience allows us to navigate life's ups and downs with grace and equanimity, knowing that our worth is not determined by our achievements or circumstances, but by our ability to remain grounded and compassionate in the face of life's challenges. By putting less focus on ourselves and more on the collective good, we begin to experience a sense of fulfillment that is deeper and more lasting than anything material wealth or individual success could provide. This fulfillment comes from knowing that our actions contribute to the well-being of others, and that, in doing so, we are contributing to the greater good. This shift from self-interest to selflessness leads to greater inner peace because it frees us from the constant striving for validation or recognition. Instead, We find satisfaction in the quiet knowing that we are living in alignment with our values and contributing to the world in a meaningful way. This journey of detaching from self-interest is not easy. It requires us to confront our attachments, our fears, and our ego-driven desires. But the rewards are immeasurable. As we begin to let go of our need to control, to compete, or to prove our worth, we find ourselves more connected to the world and to the people around us. We experience deeper joy, more fulfilling relationships, and a profound sense of purpose that comes from living for something greater than ourselves. Through selflessness, we unlock the potential for collective growth, personal transformation, and spiritual evolution, creating a life that is rich with meaning and filled with peace. As we begin to detach from self-interest and embrace a more collective, selfless approach to life, another layer of freedom begins to emerge. Freedom from the expectations we place on ourselves and others. The weight of how things should be can be so heavy, pulling us away from the present moment and leading us into constant frustration when reality doesn't align with our mental projections. But the more we release these expectations, the more we open ourselves to the natural flow of life, allowing it to unfold as it will, and in the process, we find deeper growth and boundless possibilities. We live in a world that constantly tells us how things should be, how we should look, how our careers should progress, how our relationships should evolve, and how life should unfold according to some predefined narrative. These expectations come from society, culture, and even from within ourselves. They create a framework that often feels rigid and confining, leaving little room for spontaneity, change, or true self-expression. When we become too attached to these expectations, we close ourselves off from the endless possibilities that life offers, unable to see beyond the narrow path we've envisioned. Letting go of the belief that life must follow a certain course is not an act of resignation. Instead, it is an act of liberation. Releasing attachment to how things should be means embracing the present moment and acknowledging that life can be full of surprises, change, and growth, none of which are defined by our expectations. The moment we stop insisting that things unfold in a particular way is the moment we begin to experience a freedom that is not bound by a timeline, a goal, or an outcome. When we stop expecting life to look a certain way, we also stop measuring our success by how closely things align with our plans. We can begin to appreciate life for what it is, in its raw and unpredictable form. This openness to life's uncertainty allows us to be more adaptable, more resilient, and more attuned to the opportunities that are available to us, even if they don't fit within our narrow expectations. The more we let go of how we think things should go, the more we create space for growth and possibilities that may have once seemed out of reach. One of the biggest challenges in letting go of expectations is the pressure we place on ourselves to meet certain standards or milestones. We often feel like failures if things don't go according to plan, even though life is rarely a linear path. By releasing attachment to outcomes, we stop defining ourselves by what we accomplish or how quickly we reach our goals. Instead, we allow ourselves the grace to move at our own pace, free from the burden of measuring success against a fixed timeline. This shift in mindset leads to greater peace, as we stop chasing after an idealized version of ourselves and begin to appreciate who we are right now. Living without expectations also allows us to truly embrace change. So often, we resist change because it doesn't fit within the framework we've created in our minds. When we are attached to a certain way of life, change can feel like a threat. But when we let go of expectations, we begin to see change as an inevitable and necessary part of growth. Instead of fearing it, we start to welcome it, knowing that each new experience is an opportunity for deeper learning and self-discovery. Life becomes less about controlling the future and more about embracing whatever comes our way with an open heart. The freedom of non-expectancy also deepens our relationships. We often enter into relationships with certain expectations about how they should develop, how others should behave, or what they should bring into our lives. But when we let go of these expectations, we open the door to more authentic and fulfilling connections. We begin to see people for who they truly are, not for who we think they should be. This shift fosters more genuine interactions as we stop imposing our own desires and agendas onto others, and instead allow them to show up as they are. By releasing the need to control or mold relationships, we allow them to evolve naturally, leading to deeper and more meaningful connections. This freedom also allows us to appreciate life more fully. When we're not constantly looking for what's next or how things should unfold, we can be more present in the moment. We stop living for the future or the next milestone, and instead we begin to find joy in the here and now. We start to notice the small things, the conversations, the quiet moments, the beauty in the world around us, things we might have overlooked when we were too focused on our expectations. By letting go of the pressure to chase after the next should, we open ourselves up to the richness of the present moment. Letting go of expectations also helps us release the burden of perfectionism. So often, we place unrealistic standards on ourselves and others, leading to feelings of inadequacy, frustration, and burnout. By releasing the need to meet these standards, we create the space to simply be. We stop holding ourselves to unattainable ideals and begin to accept ourselves for who we are. This self-acceptance allows for more genuine growth, as we no longer feel the need to be perfect or to have everything figured out. Instead, we embrace the beauty of imperfection, knowing that it is through our flaws and mistakes that we learn and evolve. This shift in perspective also allows us to cultivate a deeper sense of trust in ourselves and in life. When we stop holding on to rigid expectations, we begin to trust that everything will unfold as it is meant to. We stop trying to control the future and start living with more ease, knowing that we are capable of navigating whatever comes our way. This trust in the process frees us from anxiety and stress, allowing us to move through life with a sense of calm and confidence. In terms of personal growth, the freedom of non-expectancy allows us to expand beyond our limitations. So often, we place limits on ourselves based on what we think we should achieve or how we think we should be. But when we release these expectations, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities. We are no longer confined by a narrow vision of success or identity. Instead, we become open to exploring new passions, interests, and paths that may have once seemed out of reach because they didn't fit within the rigid boundaries we had set for ourselves. This freedom encourages exploration, creativity, and deeper self-discovery, allowing us to become more of who we truly are. The practice of non-expectancy also allows us to release the need for validation or approval from others. So often, we act in ways that align with what others expect from us, seeking their approval or admiration. But when we let go of this attachment, we begin to act from a place of authenticity, free from the need for external validation. We trust our own judgment and make decisions based on our values and desires, not on what we think others want or expect from us. This self-trust empowers us to live with greater confidence and independence, knowing that we don't need to rely on anyone else's approval to be fulfilled. As we continue to practice letting go of expectations, we begin to feel a deeper sense of freedom. We are no longer bound by the constraints of what we think life should look like or how we should be. We become more open to life as it is, experiencing it fully and with appreciation. This freedom leads to greater peace as we no longer struggle to make things fit into a predefined mold. Instead, we allow ourselves and life to unfold naturally, trusting that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. And in this space, we experience greater joy, creativity, and personal growth. Ultimately, the freedom of non-expectancy is about surrendering to the flow of life without attachment to specific outcomes. It's about letting go of the need to control, to plan, and to expect, and instead living with openness, trust, and acceptance. By releasing expectations, we create space for the richness of life to unfold in ways we never could have imagined. This openness brings us closer to who we truly are, allows us to connect more deeply with others, and opens up infinite possibilities for growth and fulfillment. As we move deeper into the practice of letting go of expectations, something transformative begins to take place. Not only do we find freedom in the present moment, but we also start to recognize that much of our emotional and mental energy is consumed by our attachment to time. Whether it's constantly looking back at the past or planning for the future, we often find ourselves bound by a timeline which limits our ability to grow. But when we learn to detach from the constraints of time, we unlock a new kind of growth, one that is limitless and rooted in the eternal now. Time is something that governs so much of our lives. We measure our success by deadlines, milestones, and schedules. We look to the past for lessons and the future for plans, often carrying with us the weight of regret, guilt, or anxiety about what has happened and what's to come. But when we become too attached to these temporal markers, we lose sight of the vastness of the present moment. We stop living fully in the here and now, and instead we live in a constant state of comparison, comparing what is with what could have been or what might be. Detaching from the past and future does not mean we abandon them completely. It means we stop letting them dictate our emotional state or limit our potential. When we focus too much on what has happened, we often carry the weight of past mistakes, missed opportunities, and old wounds. These things, while important for growth and reflection, do not need to control our present experience. Similarly, when we focus too much on the future, we often feel anxiety, fear, or anticipation of what might happen, and this anticipation often keeps us from fully engaging with the life unfolding before us. The practice of living outside the constraints of time invites us to stop measuring ourselves by past mistakes or future goals. It is about embracing the present moment in all its fullness, recognizing that everything we need to grow and evolve is already here in the now. When we free ourselves from the burden of time, we free ourselves from the mental chatter that keeps us locked in a constant loop of worry, regret, or anticipation. We begin to realize that the only moment that truly exists is the one we are experiencing right now. This freedom from time allows us to experience growth in a way that is not tied to any external markers or conditions. When we detach from the need to measure our progress against a timeline, we begin to experience growth in a more natural and organic way. We stop pushing for results, and instead, we focus on the process, on the steps we are taking in the present moment. This shift leads to a more sustainable and profound kind of growth, one that is not driven by external deadlines, but by internal wisdom and understanding. Living unburdened by time also means releasing the idea that we need to get somewhere. Often, we live with the mindset that we are always working toward a destination, whether that destination is a career goal, a personal achievement, or some future version of ourselves. But when we detach from the need to reach a specific point, we begin to see that life is not about getting to a particular place, but about fully experiencing each step along the way. This shift frees us from the pressure of arrival and allows us to embrace the journey itself, with all its ups and downs, twists and turns. The timeless growth that emerges from this practice is rooted in the understanding that we are always evolving, not in linear progression, but in cycles, rhythms, and patterns. Growth does not need to be rushed, nor does it need to be measured against the expectations of others or the timelines we have set for ourselves. When we let go of these constraints, we find that growth happens more easily, more naturally, and more deeply. Furthermore, releasing the grip of past and future allows us to heal in ways that were once inaccessible. So often, we carry unresolved pain from our past, old regrets, past traumas, or relationships that never fully healed. These past experiences keep us anchored in time, preventing us from moving forward. When we detach from these attachments, we begin to release the emotional weight that keeps us stuck in the past. We stop seeing ourselves as products of what has happened, and instead, we see ourselves as the beings we are right now, with the power to shape our present and future. This detachment gives us the freedom to heal in a more profound way, because we stop seeing ourselves through the lens of past experiences, and instead see ourselves through the lens of possibility. Similarly, when we stop focusing so much on the future, we release the anxiety that often accompanies it. The fear of what might happen, the uncertainty of what's to come, and the constant striving for control are all rooted in a future that doesn't yet exist. But by letting go of this attachment, we can live with greater peace, knowing that what happens next will unfold in its own time. We no longer need to force or manipulate the future because we trust that life will unfold as it is meant to. This sense of trust in the natural flow of time brings with it a deep sense of peace, allowing us to live with greater ease and acceptance. The practice of living beyond time also allows us to tap into the vast potential of the present moment. When we stop rushing through life, we begin to see things that were once overlooked. We notice the subtle beauty of each moment, the quiet blessings that surround us, and the richness of our experience. In this space, we find that the present moment is enough. It is full of everything we need for growth, peace, and happiness. We no longer need to look elsewhere, because all the wisdom and fulfillment we seek is already present, waiting to be discovered. This timeless approach to growth invites us to be more mindful, more present, and more connected to the world around us. We stop living in a constant state of doing and begin to appreciate the beauty of being. The more we let go of our attachment to time, the more we realize that life's greatest lessons are found in the simplest of moments, in the quietest spaces, and in the deepest parts of ourselves. When we let go of the burden of time, we also free ourselves from the need to compare. Often, we compare ourselves to others based on where they are in life compared to where we are. But when we stop measuring our progress by a clock, we stop comparing our journey to anyone else's. We understand that everyone's path is unique, and that the only comparison worth making is between who we are now and who we are becoming. This freedom from comparison allows us to focus on our own growth without the distraction of what others are doing or achieving. Living unburdened by time also allows us to cultivate a deeper connection with the world. When we stop rushing through life, we begin to see the interconnectedness of all things. We notice the cycles of nature, the rhythms of life, and the wisdom that exists in the present moment. We begin to live in harmony with the flow of the universe, understanding that everything is constantly changing and evolving. By embracing this flow, we find ourselves more in tune with the world and more at peace with our place in it. As we continue to detach from the constraints of time, we begin to understand that growth is not something that can be forced or rushed. It is something that unfolds naturally when we are open to the present moment and the wisdom it holds. We stop looking for external validation or measuring our success against arbitrary timelines. Instead, we trust in the process of life and allow ourselves to grow at our own pace, knowing that the journey itself is the reward. And in this trust, we discover a deeper sense of fulfillment and peace that transcends time itself. Ultimately, the practice of living beyond the limitations of time allows us to experience the true freedom of the present moment. By letting go of the past and future, we create the space for timeless growth, growth that is not bound by external circumstances or deadlines, but is rooted in our own inner wisdom and connection to the flow of life. As we embrace this freedom, we unlock limitless potential for personal growth, spiritual evolution, and peace. As we move through the practice of letting go of time's constraints and embracing the present moment, we begin to discover another powerful truth. True freedom comes when we detach from our emotional reactions. Much like how we free ourselves from external attachments and the pressure of outcomes, the way we relate to our emotions plays a pivotal role in unlocking our personal potential. When we stop letting emotions dictate our actions, we open up a vast space for growth, clarity, and authenticity. This practice of non-attachment to emotions is not about suppressing or ignoring our feelings, but about stepping back and observing them without being controlled by them. In our daily lives, emotions are constant companions. Whether it's anger, fear, joy, or sadness, our emotional landscape often dictates how we navigate the world. While emotions are an essential part of being human, we often allow them to take the driver's seat in our decisions, relationships, and actions. When we react to life purely based on our emotional states, we create cycles of impulsive behavior, stress, and sometimes regret. However, when we learn to care less about these emotional reactions, we create the space for more thoughtful, intentional responses to life. Non-attachment to emotions is not about becoming numb or detached from feeling. Rather, it's about understanding that emotions, while natural, are transient. They come and go, but they don't define us. When we are not attached to them, we can experience them fully without letting them shape our actions or our sense of self. This practice is about giving ourselves the freedom to feel without being consumed by our feelings. For example, we may feel anger rise in response to a challenging situation, but when we don't immediately react to that anger, we allow ourselves to make a conscious decision on how to respond. Whether to express it calmly, let it go, or explore the underlying cause of the emotion. This pause between feeling and reacting is where growth happens. It allows us to break the cycle of automatic emotional reactions and create space for more mindful, thoughtful actions. This shift in how we approach emotions also allows us to move through life with greater resilience. Life's ups and downs are inevitable, and how we react to them can make all the difference in our personal growth. When we are emotionally reactive, we may feel helpless in the face of adversity. But when we detach from our emotional reactions, we recognize that we have the ability to choose how we respond, regardless of the situation. This gives us power over our emotional state and how we experience life. It's not that emotions won't arise, they always will, but we begin to see that we don't have to be controlled by them. By caring less about emotional reactions, we also create space for deeper self-awareness. Emotional responses often stem from unconscious beliefs, past experiences, and fears. When we react without thought, we act from these underlying patterns. However, when we step back and observe our emotions, we begin to recognize these patterns for what they are. This awareness helps us break free from conditioned responses and gives us the opportunity to grow beyond them. By practicing non-attachment, we start to unravel the stories and beliefs that have shaped our emotional reactions, ultimately leading to greater emotional intelligence. This detachment from emotions also enhances our relationships with others. When we are attached to our emotional reactions, we often project our feelings onto others, causing conflict and misunderstanding. For example, if we feel insecure or anxious in a situation, we may act out of those emotions, leading to defensiveness or withdrawal in our interactions. But when we detach from the need to react emotionally, we can engage with others from a place of calm and clarity. We stop projecting our internal struggles onto others and start listening and responding to them with more compassion and understanding. This shift in how we relate to our emotions creates the foundation for deeper, more authentic connections. Letting go of emotional attachment also allows us to experience life with greater freedom and spontaneity. Emotions, while powerful, can sometimes limit our choices. When we are ruled by our emotional reactions, We may hold back from pursuing opportunities, taking risks, or expressing ourselves fully. But when we stop caring so much about how we feel in a given moment, we free ourselves from the limitations that emotions place on our lives. For example, the fear of failure may hold us back from trying something new. But when we detach from the emotional reaction of fear, we can move forward with confidence, knowing that emotions, like everything else, will pass. This freedom from emotional attachment also promotes a deeper sense of peace. The more we learn to observe our emotions without becoming entangled in them, the more we realize that we don't need to constantly react to life's challenges. We stop seeing emotions as obstacles and start seeing them as temporary states that come and go. This understanding brings a sense of calm, as we no longer feel the need to control or resist our emotions. Instead, we allow ourselves to feel whatever comes up, knowing that it doesn't define us and that it will eventually pass. This acceptance of our emotional landscape without attachment brings a profound sense of peace and serenity. Non-attachment to emotions also allows us to tap into our creativity and intuition. When we are emotionally attached, we often find ourselves in a state of overwhelm, making it difficult to think clearly or creatively. Our emotional state clouds our judgment and limits our ability to access our full potential. However, when we detach from these emotions, we open up the channels for more creativity, insight, and intuitive thinking. We stop being bogged down by emotional turmoil and begin to see the world with greater clarity, allowing new ideas and solutions to flow freely. As we practice caring less about emotional reactions, we also build greater emotional resilience. Life will continue to present us with challenges, but the more we detach from emotional outcomes, the more we are able to navigate these challenges with grace. We learn to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, which leads to better decision-making and a greater sense of empowerment. This resilience allows us to bounce back from setbacks, knowing that we are not defined by our emotions, but by how we choose to handle them. The practice of detaching from emotions does not mean we become indifferent or disconnected from our feelings. Rather, it means that we engage with them in a more conscious, intentional way. We experience emotions without being overwhelmed by them or driven by them. This approach gives us greater control over our emotional landscape, allowing us to navigate life with a deeper sense of ease and balance. This freedom from emotional attachment ultimately leads to personal growth, as we become more aware of ourselves and how we interact with the world. We begin to respond to life with a sense of calm and clarity, no longer being controlled by the ebbs and flows of our emotional reactions. This shift opens up space for greater self-expression, deeper relationships, and a more fulfilling life. By caring less about emotional